Well, something happened there. Yep, live stream's working.
All right, we should be live now.
Yeah, it's working.
Yay! Cool. Well, let me go tweet that out real quick.
And your voice is coming across, so it works.
Perfect. Yeah, I remember all the issues that we had doing it from the same machine, so I'm just doing it off two machines now. That way I don't have to worry about it. Because I know I would blow something up.
Probably.
Talking like 98% chance here.
You're not getting any argument from anybody.
Hey, I was thinking, when we had our meeting yesterday, I didn't ask about the news. I didn't take a look at any of the news that was on the show notes.
I threw a bunch of it in there. There was some stuff in there prior to me putting stuff in there that might have been Moss. But the stuff with notes under it is my stuff, I think, for sure.
Yeah, okay, I'm looking at it now. That OpenShot release is supposed to have the hardware acceleration built into it, I think.
Oh, I did hear something about that, and I saw it there, and I was trying to remember what was good about it, and I never got down to it to write any notes about it.
Yep. Hardware acceleration. Apparently this is like really early stages of it though.
Nice.
But that's definitely something needed. I haven't used OpenShot. I might give it a shot.
What do you use right now?
Lightworks.
Oh, true.
Or Caden Live, but I honestly don't use neither one that much because I don't do much video editing. The live streams I do with the other
Linux.
podcasts, I don't do any. I mean, I don't do any video editing outside of Linux. I just don't. Whenever my podcast that does the live stream, we just post. We don't edit it. It just posts it the way it is.
Ooh, what a Linux flex that was too.
Yeah, I've got no. Right now there's no Windows in my house, but it's only because the Windows machine that we did have in the house, that was the one that I burn up whenever the liquid leaked on my liquid cooling system.
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
And so right now there's literally no Windows in the house.
That's cool.
But it's not by design.
Just kind of worked out that way. Yeah, mine's not that at all. I have a lot of Linux, but a little bit of Windows and a little bit of Mac too.
Yeah, I have kids in high school. We have plenty of Windows.
They don't have to do they don't do the Chromebooks?
Nope.
I think around here they do Chromebooks, so I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing.
Yeah, I think in our school districts here, all of them are Chromebooks, I think.
Wow.
Even the teachers use Chromebooks because my wife, before she found a teaching job, she was like the Google expert or whatever, and she basically was IT for the teachers because they all had Chromebooks.
Oh wow, that's cool. So what's your take on that? Is that a good thing, bad thing? Chromebook over Windows or Mac or something else?
I'm not sure. I
don't know. I feel like it's all enterprisey anyway. It's not like
yeah,
just pick your poison.
I mean, my thinking is, kids are getting used to. I don't know. I'm sure that they use like I'm sure they're still using Microsoft Word and stuff like that. They may be using the web version. I have no idea, honestly. I'm completely guessing.
Yeah, Google Docs, I figure, which, I mean, at the very least, Google Doc plays very nice with ODT, which you get out of LibreOffice. So, I mean, those go in and out pretty flawlessly.
Yeah,
But
I pretty
Doc
much
still have a,
exclusively use Google Docs at home. At work, we have the Microsoft suites, but at home, I basically everything is in Google Docs.
yeah, I think we dropped, at work, we dropped all of it. We dropped all of the Office stuff, and we were all in on Microsoft. We had site license for just about everything. And then, yeah, when we went, it was probably about 4 years ago, we went full on Google Mail and everything, like the whole suite, top to bottom.
I can say this: I'm sure it was easier to manage because my wife is, I'm not criticizing her, but she's no IT expert, and the fact that she was able to kind of be IT assistants for the teaching department shows that it's a whole lot easier to administer the Chromebooks versus a fleet of Windows computers.
Oh, for sure. I mean, honestly, that says a lot about your wife, in a really good way. I think being in IT in general really doesn't require you to be smart with computers. It just requires you to be willing to learn a little bit about what you're doing every day.
Yeah.
And then I didn't record any of that. Man. I
Yeah.
was supposed to be having a mumble recording here.
We should have worked that into the show.
Whoops.
So let's see. So that's that OpenShot. Somehow we went from OpenShot to Chromebooks. And then there's a new Mate release. Ooh, I should try that. There's a Plasma release. I probably am using that. I just don't realize it.
Cinnamon Master Race, man.
I love Cinnamon, man. But when I installed Manjaro for the 5.5 kernel, I installed the Plasma Manjaro. I'm not planning on staying on it though. I don't know. I'm scared if I go back to Linux Mint Cinnamon, then I'll lose the improvements I've had. But it's just a matter of getting the same packages installed. If I just note what packages are installed now and working, I just have to install those on Linux Mint.
Well, what do you mean? Because as far as I understand, Linux Mint still has the most recent Cinnamon stuff, right?
Oh yeah. It's not Cinnamon. It's the Proton version that's installed in the Steam repositories for Manjaro versus whatever Steam is in the Linux Mint repositories.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with it.
And they could be the same for all I know. I haven't actually looked into it.
Yeah, I was under the impression they were the same, but I don't know that for a fact. I don't pay attention to it too much.
And I tried to do well, we can talk about this when we talk about that. All right, then 5.6 RC2 released.
Yeah, the news about that is not the RC2 because it's actually I think Linus said it was like half documentation, but it's that the epic thing, the epoch whatever. Linux will die in the Unix time, something 32-bit, and that's January 19th. Like they're planning on fixing that in kernel 5.6. So it's not going to be a rush like the Y2K bug was.
Oh, and Metro Exodus coming to Steam and Linux. Yeah, all the Metro games are available for Linux. I'm pretty sure, right?
Yeah, as far as I know, I don't play. I got the original one.
I haven't played any of them.
Oh, what's funny is I've never played them, but I've seen Metro Last Light reviewed very highly for a long time.
What style of game are they?
First-person shooter, yeah.
Yeah, first-person shooter, and like everybody's like underground in the subway systems for some post-apocalyptic reason.
Yeah. All right. Well, question: is anybody still on MeWe?
No, I'm not on there.
I'm not looking at ours all that. I do breeze by it and look.
Yeah, I mean, I do go by it. Yeah, I do go by it when I post the show and everything because I know it's just something that we do. But yeah, not a whole lot of comments. Honestly, our lack of being there is probably why there's no comments. But still,
that's true. Yeah, that's true. I just don't. I don't know. I'm not great at using social media, and I know it's bad for a podcaster, but I don't use it enough.
Yeah, and I try to do the whole Twitter thing, and it's just hard. I mean, mostly because I'm not a very social media kind of guy, man. I threw Facebook away years and years and years ago. Never really got back into it, but I guess Twitter's kind of slightly better in that you get to pick the people that throw taunts at you, at least in your inbox, right? I mean, for the most part. Well, the following, I guess, you see if you don't go to your mentions. I don't know. I think it's most of that is just because I don't spend. I already have limited time, right? And so it's hard to
Yeah.
want to go and do that kind of thing in the first place.
I really need to get better at it, or find somebody that's willing to do it for me. That's
Yeah,
better
there
at
you
it.
go. Right. All right. We all ready to get the let's get the show on the road?
I'm ready when you are.
All right. Joe, you want to be our countdown guy?
Hold on.
Whenever you're ready. You know, my wanderings ties in nicely with the topic that we're doing in innards anyway.
Okay, so everybody ready to start their recording?
I can do it.
2, 1, record.
So far, so good.
Okay.
Now we do the 20 seconds.
Yep, starting now. Okay.
The birds are back.
I always wonder if anybody's counting when we do that.
I'm just watching the timer on Audacity.
I was going to say, every time I do it, I just eyeball it. I'm like, it feels like 15, 20 seconds.
Yeah. Sometimes we do like a solid 45 seconds.
Yeah.
Nobody realizes how long it's been.
Yeah, usually when Tony runs it, we'll get about 25 or 30. Just to be sure.
Yeah. All right. So now we're going to do our 0. So
Okay.
3, 2, 1,
0.
0.
Close enough.
That was good.
And okay, I'm ready when you are, Leo.
Okay. Oh, dude. Oh, yeah. I'm glad we actually didn't go yet because I don't have the intro written up yet.
You can talk about fish, Leo.
Yeah, yeah. I'm actually kind of excited about it. It's half in, half out. Like I love it, but I'm probably not going to use it forever.
Yeah.
But man, if it's not amazing for like if you're unfamiliar with how things are working in the command line or whatever, fish is going to help you a lot. It's really cool. What do you call that? What do you call users and groups dealing with them? User and group administration?
Yeah, user group
Still-
administration and permissions, maybe.
Yeah, it's still permissions administration.
Yeah, actually, that could be just permissions administration. Everything relies on permissions, right?
Yep.
Just the act of making a user is allowing a certain amount of permissions.
That is true. Not a whole lot of anything, but you can log in unless otherwise noted. Been false, man. Been false. All right. I think I'm good. I think we are good.
What do we follow for the main chat these days? The YouTube chat or the IRC?
Whatever you feel like being in.
Yeah, IRC and YouTube tend to have the most chatter. Which reminds me, we get all this show ready to go, and I swear it's like without Tony, I don't know what I'm doing.
I know,
man.
yeah. Tony handles most of this.
Jeez, man.
He at least organizes it, even if he's not doing it.
Yeah, for sure. And we are a light group today. So you figured it would go a little easier because there's less cats to herd. All right. Well, at least it's posted in the normal spots. Now I can go there.
All right. So I got chat pulled up. Anybody's in there?
Same here. Are you in IRC? Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, I pulled them both up.
All right. Yeah,
but I have the. If you're not watching live, do you still get the chat live on the YouTube, or do I have to let this play but muted?
No, I went ahead and muted mine too, but I think you're good. It should just come up.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm ready to roll if you guys are.
Cool.
All the windows we have to juggle.
I know, right?
Tabs, at least.
Okay, think I'm good. Here we go. Welcome to mintCast episode 329. Welcome to mintCast episode 329.5. Livestream information is at mintcast.org/livestream. We're in the mintcast channel in IRC at irc.spotchat.org. If you see something that you'd like to hear about, tell us. Send us email at mintcast@mintcast.org. Join us live on YouTube. Post at the mintcast subreddit. Chat with us on Telegram, Discord, or post directly at mintcast.org. This is Leo, and with me today is Joe.
Hello.
And Bo.
Hey there.
And we are recording live on Sunday, February 23rd, 2020. First up, in our wanderings, I go fishing. Bo has some wine, and Joe bakes some pie. Then in our news, Python 2 is dying, a new kernel is in the works, Elementary OS is getting devs paid, and more. In security, we talk more Firefox woes. In our innard section, we talk permissions administration. And finally, our listener feedback. Well, the past fortnight, I have dived. I've gotten into dealing with fish shell. I think it's probably about a year ago that I heard about this thing called fish, and I didn't know why I wanted to use it. I had no idea. And then maybe about 2 weeks ago, it was about 11 days ago, they had a new release, 3.1.0, on the 12th. And that is what reminded me that fish existed. So I figured, might as well try it. Let's try it. So I hopped over to the website. It was an easy PPA install, just, your single PPA addition command. And enter and apt install fish. And that's all it took to get it going. Open up a terminal and type in fish. And all of a sudden you have this new terminal that reminds me a lot of the OpenSUSE terminal. I've been using a lot of OpenSUSE here lately to get people prepared for a Linux exam, and yeah, this is what it looks like. So it's just a little the directory you're currently in, and then a little what is that character? The alligator going eating things to the left. Man, what is that? Greater than.
Greater
that
than
one.
symbol.
Yeah, that one, man. and that's kind of it. It looks a little bit different than what you would get if you were just running your standard bash shell, which is like the squiggly and then the $sign and all that kind of fun stuff. So right off the bat, it looks a little different. But the cool thing about Fish is that it has autocomplete. I think that's one of the coolest features that Fish has for you. And so I mean, you start typing, apt update or something like that, and Fish is going to want to autocomplete that for you. So it just kind of reminds you exactly what you've done before. And go ahead.
Have you checked out Screen?
Oh yeah. So Screen slightly different than Fish, right? Because you're talking Screen will have the multiple shells within one shell, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so Fish is can work in conjunction with Screen. Have you played with Fish at all, or any other shell besides Bash?
I have brought up Fish before, but just I think I used it for a day, and that was it.
What did you think about it?
It was okay. I'm just a bit too set in my ways.
Yes. Okay, so I'm getting there because there was one thing that was having me pull my hair out, and that is that a lot of the old constructs that exist in Bash, one of the things that I use like all the time is sudo and 2 exclamation points, right? You hear it all the time as sudo bang bang, and that is not a thing in Fish.
I couldn't survive without bang bang.
Right. So, but that's also because Fish deals with history a lot differently than Bash does. So I was reading in, I think it may have been GitHub. I don't remember where it was, but they have a lot of documentation about the shell itself, and one of the things that they have documentation on is why they've made the decisions that they've made. And one of those decisions was to deal with history in a different way. So no more of this typing history, going to find your number, and then rerunning that particular number to run that command, right? Fish has this idea that that's something of the 80s and something of the 90s, and we have this thing called a mouse now, and we have interactive shells, right, where copy and paste is a thing, and all of that. So they've dropped this idea of running. I guess having those kind of constructs, right, like bang bang, to rerun old stuff, and they really just tell you just go fix it. Just hit the up arrow key, hit the home key, type in sudo, and press enter. As far as keystrokes go, it's a difference of maybe 1 or 2, and that was the hardest thing for me to get into my brain. That Fish is not Bash, but what Fish brings with it is that auto suggestion, that kind of thing that it blows my mind, man. All the commands that you've ever run, it basically remembers all the. I mean, obviously with your history, it remembers all the commands that you have and suggests things that you have done in the past. So it really kind of negates the need for history as long as you remember the first little bit of what you were trying to do. So that is pretty cool. The colors, man. I am a sucker for colors. I think one of my favorite things about IT in general is that I get blinky lights. That is seriously one of my favorite things about IT. If my server is blinking, I know it's healthy, or at least working in some capacity. If it blinks amber, I'm probably in trouble. If it blinks red, I'm really in trouble. But yeah, the Fish shell color codes absolutely everything. One of the other things, though, speaking of color coding, that is different is that obviously, if you know Bash well, you probably know how to script in Bash, and Fish has its own separate, and I won't fully say scripting language because there's a ton of overlap, but it deals with scripting in a much different way than Bash does. So, like if you're running the case construct, there's no more ESAC, right? So like phi and if, right? If you're opening up an if statement, you have to close it with phi. If you're opening up a case statement, you close it with ESAC, which is just the reverse of case. Well, yeah, you're done with that. There's no more of that in Fish. Now, this fully all depends on whether or not the person that you're giving the script to. If it's just you, then that's great. But if you're giving your scripts to other people, then they're probably not going to work unless those people run fish. So
They have to install fish. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, if you're going to be making them portable, then just write the thing in Bash. But you can do both. You can have fish and then write in Bash. It's not really that big of a deal, but fish does add a few things to scripting, and that makes it nice.
So how does it handle that? How does it handle the if statement? How does it know when the end is?
It's the end. Like case and then whatever the thing is that you're testing, and then you'll run the command or run the code underneath it, and that's it. Like you're just done. After you start a new indent of another case or some other kind
Python
of function
style.
Yes, yeah, you don't actually end it. It just ends because of the indentation. Yeah, it's very indent oriented, I guess, is what the idea is. And yeah, it's very Python-like. Configuration is really cool. There's like a little web page that you can go into and configure things, as well as there's a fish configuration file in your home folder that you can mess with. But that's really kind of cool if you dig other colors. And then this is my favorite thing, and I've written down that it is like a double-edged sword for people that are learning the shell. But man page completion, something that you don't always get in Bash, is when you're getting to the part of the command, but you can't really remember the option. Actually, I don't even know that that's the case. So let me test this out real quick. But no, not always. So in Bash, if you're gonna try and figure out all of the different options, Linux, not BSD style. So the difference being Linux are the letters, or Unix are the letters. Just the letter, right? So like man K or something like that, versus man dash and then the BSD style options.
Like a word.
You only get you only get the BSD style options when you try to figure that out. So like you do man space dash and then double tab, and that'll give you some of the options that you might have. But it doesn't give you any kind of definition as to what those options are. Now, BSD style is a little more explanatory, right? Because it's English. But if you're familiar with the Linux ones or whatnot, you're gonna end up in a situation where it's just not making sense to you. So in Fish, if you do man space dash tab, you get the Linux style options with not two parts. A definition of what that option does, not one English word, but like an actual definition, and an interactive keyboard that changes the option. So it will give you this display of all of the different options that you have, and then you can use the arrow keys to pick which one that you want, and then it will edit your command on the fly, and then put your cursor right where it needs to be to continue writing things out onto that command. So
that does sound useful.
It is super useful. So I talk a lot to people that are learning Linux, obviously, and this came up because I mentioned Fish Shell because of the pretty colors. I mean, that was really why I brought it up. But they caught on to the fact that I was using these the tabs to kind of help myself figure out where the command was needing to go, what the options were, and all that. And the conversation kind of went toward, well, can't I just use this to learn the shell? And I'm like, yes and no. Here's where that double-edged sword comes in.
Yeah.
It's a crutch. It can very much be a crutch.
Right.
But people that are... Go ahead.
Because you get used to it on your own systems, and you're using it all the time, and then you go and use somebody else's system to fix it or set something up, and nothing's there anymore except regular old Bash.
Exactly. And so that was the big point that I was making. Like, if you're learning the shell, sure, use Fish, but double practice on it in Bash to make sure that you're not using the color coding of running this command to like prevent yourself from having to think too hard about what it is that you're actually doing. And then same with the auto completion and all that other kind of stuff. Just be positive that you understand how this works and that you can run it in Bash if you have to. But on your own machine, obviously run Fish, whatever. You run whatever you like. But know that a lot of the systems that you're going to be encountering in the wild are going to just be Bash. So or Z Shell or something like that. So be aware that Yeah, Bash is king, still king, no matter how old it is, still king.
And if it's not running history, or at least not in the same way, and you can't use those history commands with the exclamation point, then you're almost, I don't know. I see what you're saying. It's a double-edged sword because it's the auto completion thing is a good way to teach somebody that maybe not familiar very early on, getting familiarized with the commands. But I think it should be a pretty quick migration to Bash, just so that you learn the commands that maybe are available in Bash that are not available in Fish. Fish handles things in a more advanced way, but it's not like learning that is going to be applicable to most Linux certifications or anything like that in an education environment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the biggest thing. So, bottom line is just learn Bash. Learn everything that you need to learn on Bash. And when you feel comfortable with Bash, use something fun like Fish because it's going to help you. It's going to make you do your job faster, I would imagine, in some cases. But
use
I mean,
Bash for years and then try to switch to Fish and find that you can't because you're just too used to doing it the old way.
Yeah, that's the exact situation that I'm in right now. I mean, for every day up until last week, last couple of weeks, I've used Bash. Bash has always been the way that I've done everything. So having to unlearn some of the muscle memory that I have in Bash is actually kind of tedious and not fun at all. But I mean, I can see where the value comes in with Fish. So yeah, it's half in, half out, I think.
So I'm on their website, fishshell.com, and it looks like it's available for Mac OS, Linux, BSD, and Windows. And it is the auto completion. You mentioned this, but it's based on your history. So I guess the auto completion, I'm guessing, gets better as you use it more because it knows what you're more likely to type, maybe.
Yep, that's exactly how it works. It's not lucky for us. It is not magic. But yeah, that's exactly what it is. If you run a command, 17 times, an apt command 17 times versus another apt command just once, it'll try to autocomplete the one you ran 17 times. Seems like to me.
And they also have a try it in your browser, so you can actually run it in your browser just to try it out.
Yeah, this way you don't you don't have to actually dig in and change up your system if you're not familiar with doing some of that stuff. But the funny thing about that is we're going to talk in the innards about the user mod command, and I'm going to take it in a how do you change Fish to your default shell. So yeah, definitely.
Even if you have it set as your default shell, it's not like you can't still have Bash.
Oh yeah, so Fish is my default shell. So when I pull it up, it's always Fish. But if I ever need to do anything in Bash or run a script in Bash or whatever the deal may be, I just type in Bash, enter, done. So it's super easy to go back and forth.
Yeah, I did that with Screen for a while. Had them both.
So what is Screen? Is Screen an actual shell or what is that?
It's not. It's just a different way of displaying the shell.
All right, picture this. Picture this. On a GUI, we have the ability to just smack the terminal button like 12 times and get 12 terminals up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Screen is a way to do 12 terminals within one terminal. And you do, I cannot remember the command for I think it's Control-A, and then another key press, a separate key press to, go forward through your shells, like cycle through all the shells that you have open, go backwards, kill shells, right. All that kind of thing. And you can
Control-A-C creates a new one.
Yeah, exactly.
Control-A quote lists all windows, and then Control-A number will switch you between the different windows.
Yeah, so it's got some really cool things that you can do, but it's multiple shells within just one shell. So it's useful when you're on like a TTY as opposed to a GUI.
Right.
It's like having a window manager, but for your terminal.
That's a good way to think about it. Anyway, that's enough about Fish. So, Bo, what have you been up to?
I have not been trying out Fish, that's for sure.
Not yet.
not yet. Maybe after the show, I will. I've actually been playing around with Python. And I'm awful at it. I have no idea what I'm doing. But I felt like the quickest way for me to learn something new would be just to basically come up with a project that I could do and just kind of force myself to learn it as I go through that project. Someone gave me a Python book like a year ago, and I've not learned a damn thing from that book. But I'm forcing myself to write a quick script that is I'm using it to not automate something, but to measure the automation. I'm using it to track a list of servers that are being patched, and I need a script that's going to track it as they're being patched. And so I just kind of jumped into this thing, like literally opening a blank, text document in VS Code, and Googling where to start, like without knowing anything at all. And I just started putting together what I thought I might need. And I have experience with some other scripting languages, especially with things like YAML and different types of automation languages. So I had some idea of where to start, but not in the syntax of Python. One thing I figured out that I needed was I needed to be able to save a file and have it put the date, or not the date, but the month at the end of the file. That way, every month it would make a new file. And there's a guy on the campus that I work at. He doesn't work in my department, but everybody just kind of knows him as this like Python guru, right? So I sent him a message, and I thought this was going to be simple. I sent him a message. I copied and pasted my one line of what I was attempting to do, and I just said, "Hey, whenever this file is created, I need it to append the date at the end of it so that it makes a new file every month." And the guy, he messaged me back like, "Hey, can I give you a call?" And so I said, "Sure, call me." He calls me. I screen share my laptop, and we go through this for 2 hours, rearranging my script, and he's telling me how he would do this and that, and we should make a call to this, and we gotta start making a list here and counting this, and in the end, 2 hours pass. I still don't have a file with a date at the end of it, and I end up having to redo a lot of the stuff that we did. But I still appreciate his help because he obviously was really a really brilliant guy when it comes to Python. And I think maybe a lot of the suggestions he gave me were good. They were just way over my head as far as my capabilities of following it after I got off the phone with him. But it was pretty hilarious that after 2 hours, I still don't have a file that has a month at the end of it.
That's about the time I say to heck with it. I'm doing it in Bash.
I could have already done it in Bash. I started out writing. Basically, it's a task that I do often within a terminal, and so my first reaction was, well, I'll just take the commands that I normally run and put them in a Bash file, and that way they can just run that way. But again, this was like something that I wanted to take the opportunity to learn something new, and so that's why I tackled this. And it's taken way longer than it probably would be if I had just did it in Bash. But
that's when you just write a Python script to output the Bash commands.
Yeah, I know. That was another idea I had, was if I just find out what module I need to import to just run the commands that I know that I need to run, and then basically I'm calling Python to then just run those commands. But I could at least say that I wrote a Python script. It's really just running Bash, but it's in a Python. It's got a .py at the end anyway.
Hey, so I actually meant to ask. So, well, number one, I just wanted to say that's famous last words, isn't it? Let me just write a quick script.
Yeah, or this script doesn't need comments because it's self-explanatory.
Oof, yeah, ooh, yeah. So, are you using Python 2 or Python 3?
Python 2 and 3 are installed on the system that I'm using, but I believe that my path is using Python 3. I
Okay,
believe.
good, yeah. Because we got a story coming up in the news about why that may not be the best thing to do from now on.
I'll tell you why I'll tell you why I'm hesitant to say that for sure. For one thing, I don't have enough experience with Python to, other than running other people's Python scripts, I don't really have much experience with it. And in the past, I've had a problem with running something that was maybe written in 2, but because I've got 3 in my path, that whenever I run the command to run it, it's running as 3 instead of 2, and that causes conflicts sometimes. And I've run into that before. And so honestly, the way I'm writing mine now, I'm not positive if it's using 2 or 3.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah. Again, am like a complete noob in this area. I am making it up as I go along, and hopefully I'm learning. I'm probably learning bad habits as opposed to good ones, but it's better than no habits because I didn't know anything before.
When you do your print statements, are brackets required?
No, they're not required.
Then you're
Python
using
2.
Python 2.
Really? So in 3 they are required?
They are required.
That seems like a backward step.
Yeah, well, there were, as far as I remember, there were some changes that were made that were, I guess it was because of typesetting or something like that, where you ended up with situations where you would be printing something, but then it would just break because of the way that Python dealt with it. So they fixed it by making you actually bracket around a lot of those things. So there's a bunch of changes like that.
I'll tell you one silly thing I ran into is that I wanted the font to change color. Like basically it adds a bunch of things up and then it prints out, just the number of the total. And I wanted that to show up in red if it was under a certain number and green if it was over a certain number. And I was able to do that. But it changes all my font to red or green. So like my terminal prompt after the output of that print is red or green. And if I hit enter, it'll all be red or green. Like it changed everything to red or green.
Oh, wow.
So the way I went about fixing it was I have it change the print font, and then the very next line is to remove remove that color to go back to the system default color. And I feel like that's kind of a dirty, hacky way that I've corrected that.
Hey, if it works,
doesn't seem
it works.
right though. Doesn't seem like you should have to do that though. Like I don't think that running a Python script should change your system font color.
That's one of the things that I run into all the time when I accidentally cat a binary or something like that, where like it just totally jacks up the terminal.
Yeah, it could be. It could also be putty. It could be changing my putty font, and so that's why I think it's doing that. I don't know. I'm really not sure.
I seem to remember that being much more of a problem, 5 or 10 years ago, the catting a file and it really messing up your shell.
I think it's luck of the draw, because there might just be enough escape characters in that binary. Because it's just gibberish output, right?
Right.
To have got the puzzle pieces exactly in alignment where it just actually runs a command or something.
Yeah.
The stars align to delete your Linux.
The only real Linux related thing that happened to me this week was I couldn't allow Leo to have the Kai's kernel on the show. So I installed 5.5 because you talked about it last week, and totally borked my system up. And it wasn't necessarily because of the kernel, but because I think my driver support for my NVIDIA card is not available on that kernel yet, at least not on any Ubuntu or Linux Mint PPAs. I did, as a test, install Manjaro to see if Manjaro A had the latest kernel, which it had it available. I just had to upgrade to it. And B, if the NVIDIA drivers would work right away. I think it was just that Manjaro, being Arch based, is going to be closer to the bleeding edge, even though Manjaro is not like bleeding edge. It's not a I forget what they call it. Arch is a rolling distribution or whatever the word is. They still have really, really close to bleeding edge, and so I wanted to see if even in that environment 5.5 would work with NVIDIA, and it does. It works flawlessly. It works fine.
Yeah,
So,
I thought the newer kernels were supposed to have the NVIDIA support baked in.
So I don't know what's going on, but on Linux Mint, I used that Uku program, UKUU, to upgrade the kernel, and the kernel installed fine. On the non-free or on the free drivers, on the Nuevu drivers or however you pronounce it, it works fine. But if I try to switch to the non-free NVIDIA drivers, I just get like a really basic, almost like a safe mode version of my display, and it only shows one monitor. And so I did a remove, anything with NVIDIA asterisk, and then it did remove a lot of stuff, and then I reinstalled it. I even went and tried to make sure I had like whatever the latest PPA was and installed the latest version of 440 drivers. And I even tried 430 drivers. I didn't go all the way back to like 410 or anything, but everything I did had the same result with going back to that non-hardware accelerated desktop.
Right. Did you try blocking the Nouveau drivers?
No, I don't think so. I think I tried uninstalling them because I saw a forum where someone said that they uninstalled them and then the NVIDIA ones kicked over correctly.
Yeah.
Now I may have done that. I may have done a step wrong, but just following the instructions on that particular forum didn't seem to help.
Yeah, NVIDIA drivers can be fun when they don't work right out of the box.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a problem there because I noted that when I installed it on Manjaro, when I installed the latest NVIDIA drivers, it actually had 5.5
Right.
in the title of the
Is this
driver.
on a laptop?
No, it's on a desktop.
Okay. Okay. Now, does that desktop have built-in graphics?
It's a 1060 card.
Right. It has a 1060 card. Does it also have built-in graphics?
Oh, it may. I'm not positive, honestly. I'd have to look.
Okay, then you might have to go through your D message and check and see if there were any errors loading your 3D acceleration.
So
If it's trying to load it twice, it won't load the NVIDIA drivers because it's already loaded the Intel drivers.
It could be that. I want to go back because I don't want to use Manjaro forever. I want to go back to Linux Mint. So maybe we could look into this further and report on whatever we had to do to get it working. I'm sure because when I was looking up the errors I was seeing in D message, it I wasn't coming up with forums of people saying like, oh, I've got Linux Mint installed 5.5. I got that. I didn't see that. You know what I mean? So I don't think there's an epidemic of just this NVIDIA not working with Linux Mint on 5.5. I think we would see more people posting that. So it's got to be something just in my particular situation.
Yeah. Definitely check out and see what's happening with your graphics drivers as they're loading. I'm pretty sure it's just something trying to load twice.
Yeah. Well, I'll give it another shot between now and next show. See if we can figure it out.
And as well, when you're doing your Google search, throw in Ubuntu instead of Linux Mint. Since everything on the back end is about the same, you might catch more fish that way.
True. More fish. Now I did have a problem this week that Leo helped me solve, and that was the wine situation on Linux Mint. I was trying to get Magic the Gathering Arena working on my laptop so that I could sit in the living room and play Magic and spend time with my family while also feeding my addiction. And whenever you go through the Lutris installation, it tells you to go. It gives you a link to go to their Git page and set up the PPA for wine staging and wine stable. And then it has you install that so that you have all the dependencies that you might need for whenever Lutris is installing games. And somehow, I don't know if it was following their steps or I skipped a step or what happened, but somewhere in that process, I totally screwed up my my wine repositories. My wine PPAs just seemed to just get out of whack, and I couldn't install the Linux Mint wine dash installer package, and I couldn't install the wine staging official package either. So just nothing worked. Leo was able to help me straighten it out. Maybe you could better describe my problem.
Yeah, this was as far as I remember, because I went through the exact same thing on my desktop, and I remember I don't remember if when I went and because the issue is you try to install wine staging or whatever, and it's coming from Wine HQ, and it says this particular dependency you've requested an impossible situation or something like that because it's the Wine HQ version of staging is dependent on packages that are more up to date than the ones that are in the Ubuntu repository. So you get this weird situation where it's like, dependency can't be satisfied or whatever. So you have to go around and but I don't remember if I actually fixed it this way. But you go in and it's like so and so depends on this, but cannot install. So you go and manually install it, and then you're like, well, that doesn't install because that depends on this thing, and that won't install. So you go and manually install that, and you go down this rabbit hole of craziness to try and get it all fixed up. So did the Wine Dash installer thing fix it for you, or how are you working now?
It did. So before I would try to do Wine Dash installer and it wouldn't work. And then I removed that repository. I removed the repository that Lutris has on their Git page to add, and then did just an app update, and then you put a command in Mumble. Let me see if I can find that command. Can we see past chat messages?
No, I don't think so. But was it the apt install command?
It was the apt install command, but it was with recommends.
Oh yeah, install recommends -- install -- recommends. Yeah.
Right. And so basically, if you're on Linux Mint, you need to install that wine-installer with recommends, and I think you'll be fine. Ignore any other instructions that you may get from anything else, because that seemed to be what settled it. Is I removed everything related to wine, and then I removed the wine official repository or PPA, and then I just ran that wine installer with recommends, and then that seemed to resolve everything.
Cool. All right. So it turns out this is actually something that is unique to Linux Mint. That wine - installer package is one that Clem and Co put together for us for exactly this reason. So yeah, I mean, thanks Linux Mint. You're fantastic.
I'm actually trying to go to Lutris's website to see if I can see what the actual what their instructions said to do, because I don't want to accuse it of being wrong if I might have just followed them incorrectly.
Yeah, as far as I remember, it's basically to just go through the WineHQ, install the staging repository, so that you're typing in WineHQ - staging instead of wine - staging. But that's the only thing that's the biggest part of the issue that you're running into. I think it's because it's pulling different repositories and getting these version mismatches.
Yeah, so I found it, and I do think that this is the steps that I followed, and I think this is what screwed me up. I don't know. I'd almost want to do a clean install somewhere and then try it again, but they basically give you the same instructions for Ubuntu as for Linux Mint, which in most cases I'm sure would be true. But it tells you to add the WineHQ repository, and then to do to get their key, the WineHQ key, and then they've got the sudo apt add repository, and then they've got the name of the repository based on whether you're on Linux Mint 19 or Linux Mint 18. And then whenever you do the sudo apt-get update, and then you'll do a sudo apt-get install recommends WineHQ - stable. That's where you're going to get the error message, or at least that's where I got the error message. I would I almost want to test this again to see if it breaks me again, but I feel like this is where I got in trouble, was by adding that repository and then trying to install it that way, as opposed to just using the wine - installer made by the Linux Mint team.
Yeah, I swear I remember it got fixed, and I cannot remember the computer that I put it on that I felt like I agreed with that. But I swear there were a couple of times where I actually just installed it the way that Lutris recommends you do it. I mean, well, the way that WineHQ recommends.
I feel
you
like
do
it too. Well. I really do too, because I frequently I use Lutris on all my machines, and I use Linux Mint on almost all my machines, so I frequently go through these steps. And I can think of another time I had the problem, but definitely not every time. So I don't know, man. I got to try this out. I think I got to try this out and do some more research to see if it really is a problem.
Yeah, for sure.
The only thing I can say is that on this laptop, it's not used for gaming. I basically just use it for the podcast. So like, I don't normally install things like Steam and stuff on there, but on my desktop I do. So maybe during those other installation processes, I'm installing something else that makes these steps work. I really don't know without looking into it.
Yeah, with so many machines, that might take a little bit.
Anyway, no accusations here.
Have you tried just remoting into your gaming system?
From here?
From your laptop?
Oh yeah, no. I used to do the Steam Play thing, or the Steam remote thing, where you can play games on your desktop on your laptop.
Yeah.
But unless there's a checkbox that I'm missing, it only lets me do it for Linux native games. It won't let me run Proton games.
Really?
On my laptop. Yeah. At least I tried it this weekend. I couldn't find that. I
did
could
you
be batting
turn
1,000 this weekend.
did you turn the beta on both machines?
I'm not sure. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Where do I see that in Steam?
It's the same place where you turn on Proton, and then there's
Okay.
the beta that allows you to do all Windows games.
I'll check here in a second. I got to log in. But I'll check and let you know.
Well, it's obviously on your gaming system if you're playing games that are Windows based.
Well, that's true on my laptop too, then, because I use Mansions of Madness for Windows on my laptop.
That's weird. I'm gonna have to check that out.
I'm telling you, this could have just been a bad weekend. I don't want to spread a bunch of misinformation, but I'll test it and let you know.
Okay.
The only non-tech thing that I've done is on my other podcast, ecnradio.com. We recorded our first episode of our RPG live play of Star Trek Adventures by Modifius. This is a like a D&D style game. It's based on a 2D20 system, which is a different system than Dungeons and Dragons. It's actually rolling low is better than rolling high. So trust me, I'm way better at rolling low than I am at rolling high. So it's good for me. And we did our first live play of we've designed our ship. We've got a whole crew. I'm coming up with a plot line for, say, a season of Star Trek, and we're going to do like a whole series there on that other podcast. And it's not super dramatic, we're not professional actors or anything, but we're trying to make the episodes feel really Star Trekky and really high sci-fi. So if you're into that sort of thing, please check that out, ecnradio.com. I've got the first episode on my laptop now, and I've got to edit it and post it real soon.
Which era is it?
It is in season 2 or season 3 of Deep Space Nine is the time period. I think 2371 is the year. But it's whenever they discover the Dominion, but they've not gone to war yet with the Dominion. And so we're right in that uneasy period. I feel like that's a really good place for stories.
And now, is it based around the DS9 crew, or is it just completely off and on its own?
Oh yeah, no, it's completely off and on its own. The game has a area called the Shackleton Expanse, which is basically an area of space that's set up just so that DMs can kind of do what they want and not screw up the storyline of Star Trek. But our crew is it's almost like MASH in space. We're a military like emergency response medical vessel. So we're a small vessel. We're not like a huge medical ship. And it is a tactical ship that's been retrofitted for science and medicine. So the plan is to tell stories that the crew has to go into, war-stricken areas and, maybe solve some sort of, there's a disease that's plaguing, people on a certain planet. And, we have to come in and try to help that, as much as we can either find a cure or find a way to evacuate people, those types of stories. So it's going to be less tactical heavy and more like, more Star Trek, like medical and science heavy.
Cool.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So what have you been up to, Joe?
Well, you know me, I've stayed busy, and for my reading pleasure, I finished up the Demon Accords novels again, and Stormlight Archive. I did book 1 and 2, and I'm going to start book 3 here shortly. I am looking for new things to listen to. I just haven't been able to find much that catches my interest recently. I did listen to Andy Weir's The Martian, and I have his other book, Artemis, in my queue. Both are really good books. I have read them before. I really enjoy them, so I'll be going through them again. And I used Voice Aloud for Stephen Barnes' Aubrey Knight Book 2. A classic book, really worth the read. I like it better than the first book, and I think the third book in the series was a little weak. But second book, Gorgon Child, really good. More tech related, I pulled the screen from an old laptop that had been sitting in my garage for like 6 or 7 years and converted the monitor so that I could use it with the Pi 4 with HDMI. The connection is relatively simple. I had to buy a part off of Amazon, wait for it to get shipped to me, and then for fabricating the stand, it was a bit more difficult. And a bit out of my normal wheelhouse. I used a soft board that was very light and repurposed an old tablet stand to hold it in the correct position. That was from the ST5000. It came with that stand, and I'm just using it to hold up the monitor. I attached the controller board to the back of the screen and Velcroed the Raspberry Pi 4B with the fan case to the back of the screen as well. And it's much lower profile than the other screen that I was using for it, and it's really easy to do. Um, I really like how it looks now. Like everything is on the back of it except for the powered USB 3.0 hub. I need something a little lower profile if I'm going to stick that on the back too. Also, I've never liked any of the BT receivers that I've purchased. Granted, that may be because I tend to go for the cheapest ones. If I can get them for $1 to $3, I will order them and try them out. But I do have plenty of broken headphones. Solution: bust out the soldering iron and convert an old pair of headphones into a Bluetooth receiver, giving longer battery life and better sound quality. I used a Sony XB650, and it's really not the simplest choice for this, but the final product is really very small and looks good, and it works well. Well, it worked well, but I'll get to that in a minute. A lot of solder points because I had to pull all the circuit board from the left ear along with the battery and move it all to the right ear before I could hook up the 3.5 millimeter jack. Got it done. Works great. Very similar to a previous build I did where I used a neck band for it and just ran 2 wires out and hooked that to a 3.5 millimeter jack. That one is good because the mic's already right there, but the lower profile on this one is really nice. I was thinking about making it into a belt buckle or having it attached to my belt somehow. And I was able to hook the microphone cable up and use a 4-pin 3.5 millimeter female jack. And that did have one issue, but I'm pretty sure that was because it was an older jack or it was because of a grounding issue, both of which I can fix relatively easy. But I found out right before the show that my son got a hold of it and broke the 3.5 millimeter jack that's currently there. I'm a little annoyed. That was a lot of work. But it was fun, and it's not too difficult to fix. I'll just have to order more 4-pole 3.5 millimeter extensions and use the female side of that. I also received a DIY desktop headphone amplifier. Really fun to put together. I had to solder all of the parts on, all the resistors, the potentiometer, the power piece, and the 2 little processors that do both sides of the audio.
That's cool. Was it like a kit?
Yeah, a whole kit that I ordered from China for like $9.
That's
And
awesome.
when I first set it up, I did have a small problem with the left channel, but I was able to go in with my soldering iron and just straighten out the chip a little bit. I think it just wasn't seated properly. And it does increase volume. It does that really well. And I had a 12-volt power supply that fit it. I'm going to look and see if I have an 18-volt somewhere because it has that range from 12 to 18 and see what happens there. Now, it got louder than I could listen to. And it did cause some distortion on the Krakens I was using, but it did a lot better with the Neo 99 Classics, or no, the 99 Neos that I have. And it sounds great. And for $9, I mean, it actually really is worth it because if you look at the cost of most desktop headphone amplifiers, it's what, between 30 and 100?
Right, yeah.
And
Sometimes a lot more than that, yeah.
Yeah, and it's, it's not the greatest quality audio, but I have had systems in the past where I just could not get enough volume out of the main system, and this would be a great fix for it. Plus, it gave me an excuse to bust out the soldering iron and have fun and do something other than, specifically Bluetooth headphones. Yeah, and I went to the Lug last Saturday and spent a lot of time there writing show notes. Had my son with me; he had a blast. And I was using my 7130, and he was using my 7140 because evidently his HP Mini that he has needs a new battery. Lots of discussion about old school Linux and new advances, and a lot of discussion on PowerShell on Linux and WSL. And then for the not so fun, I had to have a root canal. Yeah.
Ouch.
And it was on Wednesday, and we record the Linux Lugcast on Wednesdays, so I had to miss that. And then they also, because the root canal was early, they scheduled me for a cleaning later in the day, and so my mouth was like numb all day. Now, I do want to ask everyone a headphone-related question about cable hardening. And it's something that happens to some headphone wires as they age, and where they just kind of get stuck in a position or they get really difficult to bend around. And the only thing I know to do is use a hair dryer to get them in the most comfortable position and then live with it or replace the whole cable. So I'm wondering if anybody else knows of any other kind of solution that would work for that. And I did order and receive the parts to fix my 3D printer. And hopefully because I paid the extra $10 to get the MOSFETs to go along with the main board this time, so I can do it all at once. So I'm not having to replace the main board again for a long time, hopefully, instead of it only lasting 2 months. And the MOSFETs, if they blow out, they're like $10 to replace, as opposed to the 120 for replacing the main board. And hopefully this evening I'll be able to get that all put together and run a couple of test prints and see how everything works and get back to you all next time on that. And that's really all I've been up to.
As far as the headphones go, I don't know that I have had a pair of headphones do that to me. Maybe I just don't keep them long enough or something. But I guess I've gone Bluetooth with pretty much everything, so I don't deal with too many cables
You've gone
anymore.
wireless Bluetooth, or
Uh-huh.
yeah, it happens more on your cheaper headphones too, instead of your higher end ones. 'Cause I never had it happen with any of the ones that came in the box with any of the Samsung phones that I've gotten, but other ones, I don't know. The plastic around the cable just gets super hard.
So my MacGyver thought was just crack open all the plastic around the cable itself and then just rewrap the cable in electrical tape.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Oh no, believe me, I've considered that. It just, it comes apart, and then especially with electrical tape, you get the stickiness seepage, and then that'd
Oh
end
yeah.
all up on your neck. I'd also thought about doing it with like heat shrink cable, except
Oh
that gets
yeah.
hard. That gets hard right away too.
Oh, got it.
I think I'm thinking, don't they make like a twist that'll curl around cables to try to help protect them?
Yeah, but I don't know if that would help with cable hardening.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and is that like an artifact of just it being too hot and too cold and too hot and too cold? I mean, you can blame Texas for that.
Yeah, it's like a
It
Texas
could be.
thing.
It could be. I'm not sure what exactly causes it, other than aging plastic breaking down a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe sunshine would help that process along. Maybe getting wet helps that process along. I'm not sure.
Interesting. I don't know.
Quit wearing your headphones in the shower, and you'll be all right.
Well,
That's
then
the
they
answer right
then
there.
they shouldn't be waterproof.
It's true.
Listen, they call the phones waterproof too, but you're not supposed to throw them in the ocean.
Mm. Well, that's because that's salt water. They're not salt waterproof.
Or the bathtub. And that's hard water, right? The calcification.
Mm. No, well, the bathtub is okay for a few seconds. So, if you're taking a nice, comfy bath with your scented candles and your bath bomb, and you have your phone and you drop it, and then you pick it right back up, it should be fine.
Well, here's hoping that stays true.
Except for the new folding ones, which I don't think they've made any that are waterproof yet.
So
Are y'all gonna get one of those?
Hmm?
Are y'all gonna get one of those?
the
Not
folding phone.
now. Have you seen the reviews on basically all of them? I mean,
No.
most of them break in the first few weeks, right on the seam.
All right, so I can give you a bit of an update. I logged into Steam, and from right now, if I wanted to, I could stream Path of Exile from my desktop to my laptop, which I think is a Windows installation running on Proton. Yeah, I'm sure it is. But I cannot stream Elder Scrolls Online, which is also a Windows installation running on Proton. So I don't know why I could one and not the other. I'm not sure.
Ooh. I don't know if it's related, but I was reading somebody's, I guess, lamenting of the fact that they got banned because some of the games say that you cannot use remote control software, otherwise you're in breach of terms of service, and they will ban your account. So that might have something to do with that.
Really? It could be
Mhm.
something like it could be like maybe the game has that option whenever they put things on the Steam store. They can say whether they allow that or not.
Yeah, I wonder if that's what that's about. And don't quote me on that, but I did read a story about someone getting banned off that. And then the story got deeper because the guy had gotten like banned for buying gold or something before in a previous thing. But I mean, that thing is what caused the current ban that he's experiencing now.
Yeah. So I don't think the differentiator is whether it's running on Proton or not, because my installation of the game I just said was installed on Proton, and I can also stream Azura, which is a Diablo-like game from a company that it's made for Linux. And so I saw that I could stream that, and I could not stream Elder Scrolls. So my brain went straight to, oh, it must be that if it's native for Linux and it lets you stream it on Linux, but that was inaccurate. Yeah, because I can stream other games.
Yeah, and well, okay, at the risk of making this wandering section absolutely the longest wanderings we've ever had with the smallest amount of people.
I'm trying to fill time because we got less people.
How in the world does Path of Exile play on Linux? Is it good?
I have not gotten past the starting area on Windows or Linux. Yeah, so I couldn't tell you.
Oh wait, okay. As in the game is not interesting enough to go farther.
No, it's just not. Oh yeah, the game runs fine as far as I can tell. As a matter of fact, the only reason why I installed it was because when I installed Manjaro, they had a link to it in the menu. They had a link to Path of Exile on Steam, so I clicked on it and I was like, oh, what's this? Does Path of Exile come pre-installed on Manjaro now? And when I clicked on it, it instructed me to install it on Steam, and I did so. Why not? And just to see how it ran, and it runs great. But it's just not a game I'm super into.
Wow, huh? I love ARPGs. Path of Exile is probably the king of ARPGs at the moment. So wow, okay. I haven't played it on Linux just because I was afraid of how bad it might be, but that gives me hope.
I thought that because they had an option like in the menu for it, I thought that like it must be Linux native, but it's installed under Proton.
Yeah, I checked it on ProtonDB not too long ago, and I think it was maybe silver or gold. Let me see. Exile. It is. That's gold. Huh. With 420 reviews.
Yeah, I mean, I've never played it on Windows. As far as I know, it's exactly the same.
Very cool. Yeah, so complaints about performance, but other than that, most of the people are saying it's great. Huh. I might give it a shot. Okay, so now that the wanderings are longer than we normally do, let's head down to the news. So we got ourselves a good chunk of news this time around, and a lot that have to do with Ubuntu, its derivatives, and the kernel. So we'll start with Python 2 is in 2004 going to be removed. There will be no Python 2 left to be run. So those scripts that you're running, Bo, they may decide to break if you upgrade yourself up to Ubuntu 2004. So you run Linux at work?
Yeah, CentOS.
Oh, okay. So you may not run into this for years then.
Right, yeah.
So yeah. Yeah, but Ubuntu 2004 is pulling the plug. So if you have scripts or binaries that rely on Python 2, yeah, they're probably going to stop working eventually. And I don't know how you'd fix this for people that just do not want to move off of Python 2. I don't know how you fix it other than hope
you don't
for
give
the
them
best.
a choice.
Well, yeah, I think that's what
my
Ubuntu's
job
doing.
did. That's what my workplace did. So we had a lot of helper scripts, my team that we wrote, that were all done in Python 2.7, and so they forced this change, and you're no longer allowed to use Python 2.7. So we had to, I had to go in and convert everything, all the errors that were popping up, so that everything worked with Python 3.7. That was a couple of weeks worth of work.
So this is why you know Python 3 so well. you had to walk uphill both ways, huh?
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
But it was a little bit easier because I was working with, because I wasn't the original writer of these scripts, so I was working with somebody else's script, and the tool I was using showed me right where the errors were, and then all I had to do was adjust it enough so that it would work with Python 3.7.
Oh, that's cool. And then on top of that, they weren't your scripts, so you had to you were able to take all the emotion out of it, right?
Right, exactly. No emotion.
It's my pet, my baby, no. So I imagine the only way that people that refuse to get off Python 2 are going to be able to get along is you're going to have to adopt Snap Flatpak or AppImage or something so that you can bundle in all the Python libraries and binaries that you need. But I mean, I don't know what you do.
Run everything in a Docker container.
Ooh, that's the answer. That's the other one. Yep.
And it's another buzzword right now too in the industry. So you just say you want to containerize your Python 2 scripts.
Yeah, cloud, Kubernetes, DevOps, containers, all that. Yeah, man, just to shove all that on your resume, you're hired.
What's funny is I think Docker has been on my resume for like a good 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, you've been talking about Docker for a while now.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't known you for that long, but I know that even whenever I was just starting to find out what it was, you were one of the experts I knew on the subject.
Well, I don't consider myself an expert because I just use Docker Hub. It's not like I'm making my own images or anything.
But still, I mean, running Docker in general is already a skill. So yeah, you're up there, man.
Yeah, time to quit my job and go find a new one.
Right. Fastest way to get a raise.
It is.
All right. Well, still on the Ubuntu 2004 subject. So it looks like GNOME 3.36 is gonna be the flavor of choice for Ubuntu 2004, and they've got a real Windows 10 vibe going on. So on this, there's a bunch of mock-ups over on OMG Ubuntu, and I saw those and I was like, ooh, that looks like Mac. Oh wait, the blur, that looks like Windows 10. So I feel like GNOME, at least the login screen, the lock screen, has kind of pulled the best of both worlds in that instance. So I mean, I like the way that it looks, to be honest with you. So yeah,
is GNOME still a resource hog?
Not as much as it used to be. They fixed a bunch of the memory issues, the memory leaky issues that they had back in like 3.30. And yeah, as far as any modern system, well, I can't say that, but most of your modern systems are probably going to eat up a gig of RAM or so once you start, kind of dragging things around on the desktop or whatever, on top of the fact that Chrome and Firefox are going to, eat like 3 or 4 gigs once you really start going with them. I feel like the desktop environments are the least of our worries anymore, unless you're still running on like 2 gigs of RAM, in which case XFCE is over that way.
Or Mate.
Yeah, or Mate, or what is it? LXDE. It's not LXDE anymore, is it? It's
LXQT.
Oh, in tandem too. I love it. And then looks like GNOME is going to be adding on a do not disturb toggle, fixing up some of their global search results. So I was looking at the screenshots of this, and it looks like they're doing this cool combination thing now when you're searching. Their global search is one of the best ones, I think, and they categorize things a little bit better, so it's easier to find stuff in there. And as well, seems like to me, GNOME has been pretty hostile to extensions ever since like GNOME 3, because they kind of had their vision of how that was going. But now they have an official extension app. So yeah, the GNOME extensions app. Cool. And then lastly, of course, it's still in development, so things will probably change. But if they stay the same, I think I'd be pretty happy with all of that. So it's definitely worth a look at those screenshots. I think they look pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm just not on board with the extensions paradigm.
Yeah, because it seems like every time you upgrade anything, stuff breaks. So if you're using GNOME on like Fedora or on Manjaro, where you're actually getting the new versions of GNOME as you're going forward, stuff breaks, man. The only upshot to that on Ubuntu is that you're stuck on 3.36 for the life of that particular version, so you don't run into that nearly as much. But I'm sure there's still some breakage around there somewhere.
Yeah.
Every time I've run something that had GNOME installed on it, at the start, it hasn't lasted very long. I've given it a try, and then usually within a day, I've installed Cinnamon.
Yeah, I like the look of it. I want it to work, but I just can't install 20 extensions to I don't know. I'm not into that paradigm.
I did try to do GNOME as a like vanilla GNOME and just go for it and see how you'd get on.
Yeah.
And so I did Fedora for about a month. It was Fedora 30 or 31. I don't remember which one it was, but I did it for about a month. And I really think it's like Fish Shell, where once you break those old paradigm habits, it's not horrible. It's really not bad.
Yeah.
I got away from using the super key all the time to open up the menu because my hand was always on the mouse, and I would just like jam it up there in the top left. And at the beginning, that activities thing, like I hated it. But as I remembered that it was up there, and as I kind of got that muscle memory to just flick the mouse up there, I didn't hate it anymore. It wasn't that bad, to be honest with you. But
I believe it.
Yeah,
I believe it's something you could get used to. But I don't know it's for me.
Yeah, well, definitely. I'm obviously not on GNOME right now, so I couldn't go with it full time or anything like that. But it's grown on me a lot, and the fact that they sped it up in 3.30 and beyond has really helped with that. So yeah, it's just one of those things. You got to get used to it. You got to like it in the first place. You got to get used to it, all of its weird paradigmy things. But obviously, it wouldn't be the default in every DE out there if it weren't at least semi-workable. So, half in, half out. I'll stick with Cinnamon. I do like it. So kernel 5.6 RC2 released. This one's not... I didn't put this one in here because I cared too terribly much about the second release candidate for kernel 5.6, but it's because there was an article on ZDNet that came out that reminded me that in kernel 5.6, we're fixing this whole epoch time thing. So we're going to run out of time. January 19, 2038, Linux's life will be over. And that's because starting from, what was it, like January, 1970, we started counting time, and then January 19, 2038 at 2 p.m. or something like that, time stops because we are not able to continue counting because the 32-bit value that we're storing time in is full. You can't put any more time in there. There's no more bits to flip anymore, so everything is a 1, and so we run out of time, so to speak. And
Holy cow.
Yeah, Yeah, so like this is like another Y2K moment where like if we don't fix this, the internet will stop existing.
This is
Quite
the Linux.
literally.
This is like the end of the Mayan calendar.
Yes. Oh yeah, we
That is
can have
so
predictions
crazy.
and everything. Yeah, so supposedly what's going to happen at 2038 is just Linux boxes are going to stop working, and as you may or may not know, Linux is pretty much the entirety of the internet when it comes to the web servers that you touch, the routers and modified in a way, the routers and switches that you move across, and all of that kind of fun stuff. The majority of that stuff lives on some kind of modified version of Linux. So with this 32-bit value not being fixed to a 64-bit value or larger, and they're fixing it by going to 64-bit, time would quite literally stop. So yeah, 5.6
or roll back
seems.
to the start date.
So I don't know that that's how that would work, because I figure all these softwares are written with a non 32 zeros in a row kind of idea. That doesn't compute. So I don't know. I trust the guys that work on the kernel that say that this is going to be an issue, that it's going to be an issue.
Yeah, true.
But yep, sure enough, 5.6 is going to see some of the very first changes to the kernel, so that this will not be an issue. There's still a bunch of stuff that needs to happen before it's fully fixed, but hey, step in the right direction. 18 years prior to it being a real actual issue, so I think we're getting a good jump on this. Now this story is actually pretty cool. I really enjoy this because, for one of two reasons. Number one, devs are getting paid, and number two, it's on a Flatpak train. So Elementary OS is building an app center for everyone. They've got a crowd funder going on over at Indiegogo. They've already met their goal. So I mean, if you're throwing money at them, you're just giving them extra money, which is not a bad thing at all. But know that they actually made what they wanted to do, and they're gonna be jet setting all over the place and doing these cool sprints and making this all happen. So the idea with this App Center for Everyone idea is that they want developers to be paid for the work that they do. I mean, that's kind of the goal of every developer, right? I mean, I guess if you're fixing problems for yourself, then you don't expect to be paid. But if you're fixing problems for everybody else, especially when that code gets reused a gajillion times and companies start making gajillions of dollars off of it, hey, it might be a time to start, throwing some money a developer's way. And even if not, right? If it's a note-taking app that saved your life, throw the guy a $5, So the whole idea with this is that they've already gotten this proof of concept working in Elementary OS, right? You can already pay for applications within their app store, but they want that to be everywhere, and they want that to be leveraged on top of Flatpaks as well, so that number one, the functionality, you don't have to have this app center, but the functionality itself will be open source so that everybody can take advantage of it. And Flatpak is, at least they call it, the universal containerization. I forget the actual phrasing for it, but right, universal packaging. And at the very least, Linux Mint feels that way about that, because Flatpak is installed by default. So as far as effort goes, I don't know exactly how much it would take, but I imagine it's less than if you are a Snap distribution. So Linux Mint could probably be one of the first ones to take advantage of something like this. So long story short, pay what you want to software for the devs that actually created this stuff, and hopefully this kind of idea is going to permeate every desktop environment, every distribution that exists. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, I think it would be really good.
Yeah, I figure the subtext to all of that is that, if developers are getting paid, then they might be more prone to coding for Linux in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. It's always been a problem with having a really nice uniform way to contribute to developers. I mean, there's lots of different ways, but I think that if we kind of standardize behind one, I think that might garner more success.
Yeah, and on top of that, I think we're just a forgetful bunch, us humans. And it's just so easy to go into the software store and click install and it's done, right? But if there's a little thing that says, hey, pay your dev, I think we might be reminded that, yeah, man, that lady or that guy that put that software in that repository, he deserves $1 or $2, every now and then anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Next up, we've got a couple of releases for you. So if you are a KDE fan, Plasma 5.18 released. This one, as far as I know, is a pretty big one. You're the emojis. You get an emoji selector. That is one of the coolest ones. And they finally integrated in the what is it? Redshift, the night color thing, where it's gonna yellowize everything to kind of be less stressful on your eyes. The privacy improvements. So as when you install KDE, it basically asks you to pick how much information you want to send out to the KDE developers, or the Plasma developers, so that they can make good decisions moving forward. And you can go all the way to the left where you're just like, no, I don't want any of that. Or you can do it all the way to the right where it's like, yep, take everything about my system that you can ever possibly want, minus personal identifying information, obviously. And then there are options in between where there's kind of a mix of some of that stuff. So it's finally the trend, right? I think everybody's doing it now, where just a little bit of information from you goes a long way, helps people develop better stuff, etc., etc. Global themes, some other UI improvements. So yeah, KDE coming up in the world still, and looking better and faster than ever. But I will tell you, Plasma stole my heart when I found out that you could add blur to the background of your terminal. So I don't know about you guys, but do you guys have transparency in your terminal? Do y'all do that?
Yes, transparency, but no blur.
Yeah. So it's only in Plasma, as far as I know. They have the lock on this blur stuff. And then I read the thing about GNOME 3.36 and how they're doing the blur effect on the image, on the wallpapers or whatever for your login screen. And I'm like, all right, well, it's time. It's time now, right? So you're gonna add the blur to the terminal, right? Right? Because it's GNOME terminal. I need this, man. You don't understand how petty I am about this. I need this in my life.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen blur. I use some light transparency on some of mine. Not all of them, but some of them.
Yeah, I love me some transparency. That actually is what convinced me to start tinkering around on the terminal way back in the day. But I saw blur in Plasma maybe a couple of months ago. I didn't know it was a thing, and I saw it in some screenshot, and I'm like, no way. So I go in, and no, sure enough, there's just a little checkbox that says add blur, and it's like, whoa, it looks fantastic.
Plasma's legit, man. It's pretty good.
Yes, it blows my mind that Plasma is not the default on more distributions. It just blows my mind.
It's really, really improved. It's really good. It's been good for a little while too.
Yes, ever since Plasma 5, I think, is really when they, because I mean, as a matter of opinion, Plasma 4 was kind of a dumpster fire, but Plasma 5 really, really kind of took the stuff that they learned from 4, the mistakes that they made good decisions about that, and just started just being amazing after Plasma 5. So I can't say enough good stuff about it. But I will say one bad thing about it. Listen, if I put the clock in the middle of my taskbar and I log out and I log back in and that clock is not in the middle of the taskbar, I am upset. Man, I put it there for a reason.
Maybe they fixed that. Maybe that's fixed in 5.18.
I have a friend that told me that I think that he thinks that they fixed it. But man, I will not. Oh, okay. So the blur brought me to Plasma. The moving clock took me away from it. It just blows my mind that you can't just drag it into the middle and drop it there and it's done, right? You gotta like add all these separators and do all this janky stuff with it to try and keep it in the middle. But man, just lock in the middle, please let me do it. So I think they fixed that in 5.18. One of the people that run Plasma that I know was singing the praises about, hey, I don't have to move stuff around on my taskbar anymore. I'm like, cool. Time for another Plasma shot.
A shot of Plasma.
A shot of Plasma, yeah. Now, Mate 1.20. Oh, Mate 1.24. Now, Bo, you said you dig Mate every now and then. I'm not too terribly much of a fan, at least not on Linux Mint. For Ubuntu Server or something like that, if you want a GUI, Mate's great. So do you know much about this one?
Mate used to be my daily driver. I mean, I used it, the Linux Mint Mate version. I used to run Ubuntu Mate. Mate was my jam for a while. I switched to Cinnamon because I think we were talking about it. I think we were talking about it on the show or something about how much Cinnamon had changed, and so I tried it. Oh yeah, it was whenever we got that hate that there was that hate article about Cinnamon that came out, and so I decided to try it in response to that, and I've actually switched. I run Cinnamon. Right now I have Plasma on my Manjaro installation, but as I said before, that's really just a test installation. My go-to is almost always Cinnamon now since we went over that article. But I think the Mate project is really cool. I mean, I think they do a lot of really good stuff, and I really like that desktop environment. My mom's been running it. I installed Ubuntu Mate on my mom's computer forever ago, and other than the your normal updates and upgrades, I've not made any changes to it, and she has she doesn't care about computers. She has no idea what she's running, and she loves it. She loves it as much as she would love any desktop environment because I don't think she's super interested in the first place. But yeah, I think it's really cool. But I can't speak much to 1.24 because I haven't used it in a while. I haven't used it in a while.
Well, all my machines have both Cinnamon and Mate installed on them specifically because I use X2Go, and it's just easier to use X2Go with Mate
definitely
than it is Cinnamon. And I didn't know that there was a new release out yet, so I haven't really checked it out.
That is true. X2Go, everybody used to use XFCE. I think Mate is kind of the default now for people installing X2Go.
I used to use LXDE on it.
Mm-hmm.
But LXDE. Now I use Mate.
It's crazy. I see people still using IceWM.
Oh, I think they would take offense with the way that you worded that too. Like, still, yeah, obviously, yeah. I don't know. I could never really get into the window manager thing. I guess I grew up with a mouse, and so I'm just used to the whole full GUI thing going on. But yeah, I mean, I can certainly see the appeal.
I went through an
open
box. I went through an open box phase, but short-lived.
Yeah.
Is IceWM available on the Pi?
More than likely. Let me. I'm gonna go to their website right now and see what they've been up to lately.
No, because all the window managers and desktop environments are.
My Bluetooth mouse isn't interacting well with Pi, and so that's causing me issues because I have to move another mouse over from another machine all the time. But a proper window manager would solve that for me.
Yeah, their latest release was in January of this year.
I'll have to try it out.
I didn't realize they were a frequently updated project.
There's a bunch of window managers out there for sure, and yeah, you got people that certainly swear by them. Well, next up, we get OpenShot 2.5.0. So if you are a video editor, then you might want to check this out. One of the headlining features for this one that Bo brought my attention to was the whole hardware acceleration support thing. So this is where your graphics card is going to be used to encode your videos instead of your CPU, which 900 times out of 901 times, you're talking it's going to be a huge improvement in terms of speed of actually encoding or decoding any of the videos that you're dealing with. So, I mean, heck, if you're doing video editing, you kind of need that video card. Put it to work. Let it do a lot of that work for you so that you can actually do the things you want to do instead of waiting for it to import or export or whatever. So that is awesome. And they've got new thumbnail generation, so that's going to come up a whole lot faster for you. Blender 2.8 support, so if you're doing any of the stuff that you're creating is in Blender, The .blend format is available now in OpenShot, and an auto backup feature that will prevent you from, if your computer blows up in the middle of an edit, you don't lose all of the work. You might lose a little bit of the work, but you won't lose everything. And this is probably a welcome change for anybody that has been working on a video for 3.5 hours and your computer reboots.
Yeah, that's definitely a very good change.
Definitely.
A very good feature to have, yeah.
Oh, for sure. So, yeah, if you're doing video editing, check it out. And the last thing, as a little quick blurb, there is Metro Exodus is done with their who is it, Epic or whoever, Epic Games exclusivity agreement, and they're finally coming to Steam. So that's great, but that doesn't make sense as to why we put it in the show. Well, we put it in the show because as it's coming to Steam, Metro Exodus also runs on Linux. So another game for you Linux gamers to play, just in case you were needing any more. Yeah. There's already hundreds in the Steam store. So
I'm still waiting for April to see if Borderlands 3 pops up with a Linux native version.
Yeah, I'm hoping for that.
They've done that in the past. Their other games are
It was bad enough that Epic got the exclusive on it, and okay, I can understand whatever, people making money, but Epic mostly just refusing to do anything with Linux.
Oh yeah, we had Tom Sweeney posts all the time that like doing that, or he wants to support Linux, but then he won't actually do anything to support Linux in the background, all that, and then because you have all these Epic things that are going on that are pretty hostile to a lot of Linux. There was actually an article we talked about last show or the show prior to that, where Epic was banning people for running Linux. I can't remember what it was. Maybe it wasn't Epic. I don't remember, but it was some game banning people for running it through Proton.
It wasn't Epic. It was a specific game, but I don't remember which one either.
Okay.
So I'm on Metro Exodus's page in the Steam store, and they don't list the Linux version. They only have the Windows icon here.
Oh, interesting.
But I know that previous Metro games were Linux available. So I just clicked on Metro Last Light, and it has Windows, Apple, and Linux. And
it seemed like a lot of companies for a while there were leaning towards making Linux native games, or games that would at least run natively on Linux. And then just this year, it seems like they've all moved away from that.
Yeah, I imagine it all goes in waves, but this is where that store is really going to come in handy. The one that Daniel Frey is working on for Elementary OS, because if you release a game via Flatpak, even if that comes with like the wine binaries and all the other stuff that makes it run, as good as it can possibly run or whatever, you throw that guy a $5 bill, and if 100 other people throw that guy a $5 bill, then his next game's absolutely going to come out on Linux as well. And that hopefully there'll be a tweet storm about that or whatever to get other developers to do that kind of thing. So hopefully all of the things that are happening in Linux right now are going to make for a really good future. I feel like they are. But my gut's been wrong before.
Yeah, but then you got to get somebody to throw out a patch there every time a new piece of DLC comes in, so that it can also be added to what was there before to run in Linux.
Yeah, for sure. But if it's Linux native in the first place, then then you won't have to really worry about patching it together or whatever.
I just checked. Metro 2033 is also for Windows, Mac, and Linux. So I'm imagining that the store may just not be updated yet, or maybe they've not confirmed the other two versions.
Yeah, as of right now, it's only been 5 days, I think, since it was officially launched on Steam. So it may just be a coding thing, but I don't know. Maybe he was just talking about through Proton.
I don't doubt that they would make it natively available just because they haven't with their other games in the past. It may just not be right away. For now, you might just have to run it on Proton.
Oh, you know what it might be? I think there isn't a Linux client yet, but there will be or something like that. And so if you buy it in Windows but don't play it until you get it in Linux, then that might be what it is. I think we're just waiting on it.
But you're talking about supporting game developers that make games for Linux. That game I mentioned earlier in the show, that Asura game, it's a Diablo-like game. The only reason I bought that game was because I saw somewhere that they were a company that was trying to only make games that run natively on Linux. And so I basically bought the game and hardly ever played it, just because I was like, well, I want more people to do this sort of thing, you know? So I think we need to see more of that.
Have you checked out Torchlight? And
Torchlight
2?
Yeah, that was native Linux.
Yes.
Is Torchlight 3 native?
I haven't seen Torchlight 3.
Torchlight, the new Torchlight, is it Torchlight 3 is the one that's going to be like an MMO style?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Like I said, I haven't seen anything on Torchlight 3. But Torchlight 2 was very Diablo-esque.
Yeah, it definitely is. I have it as well. I've never even played that game, but just like the others, I got it just because it was available for Linux.
It actually is a pretty good game.
Yeah, I think I made a character, and I didn't really play it much. I have a weird thing where, especially with games that are meant to run on Windows, and getting them to work on Linux, I'm more into the hacking them to work on Linux part. And a lot of times, once I get them working, I'm kind of done with that's the fun of it for me.
Yeah, I love doing problem solving like that. And yeah, so it looks like Torchlight 3 is not even out. So sometime this year, looks like. So I'm not positive if it's going to be on Linux or not.
That company, I mean, I feel like it will be.
Yeah, because Torchlight 2 was available for Linux as well, and then obviously Torchlight 1 was too. Interesting. I guess to be seen. We'll see. All right, well, that'll wrap it up for our news. So we'll head down to our security update. We got one security update for you, and it's a pretty big one, I would say. If you are not running on the latest Firefox 73, well, up in or down on the bottom right-hand corner of your Linux Mint screen, click on that little shield and run your updates, because there are a couple of high-severity memory safety bugs. So that were affecting versions of Firefox 72. So as far as I know, up to Firefox 73, where we currently are, we have the two bugs fixed. That was CVE 2020-6800 and then 6801. And yeah, these are essentially bugs that would allow someone to either execute arbitrary code. And this is the bad one, right? If you ever hear remote code execution or execute arbitrary code, you're in trouble. Those are the bad ones. Those are the ones where people can actually run whatever they want to on your system, privileged or non-privileged. I mean, in both cases it's bad, but one being worse than the other, obviously. But either that or denial of service on your machine, so causing crashes and all of that kind of fun stuff. So in the interest of time, because we went a little long, I won't go too terribly far into this one, but suffice it to say, just keep up with Firefox 73. If you're on 73 right now, then you are golden, at least against these particular bugs. But if you are not, and you're afraid of updating other components on your system, just install the updates for Firefox. That way, you're going to be protected against those things. That'll do it for our security update. Let's head on to Linux Innards. All right, so in this Linux Innards section, we are going to be letting Bo take the reins on this one, mostly because you're the one that needs to know this stuff, right?
Right, yeah, the one studying for the exam. So this is continuing with my LPIC exam study. It's the LPIC 1 exam. And this section that I wanted to review with you guys today is user and group management, and also file permissions. And Hold on one second. I need to start my video recording.
That's right. We're going double live.
Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned it last time. I'm trying to record these sessions, and maybe we can post them in a playlist on YouTube for anybody that may be studying for the same exam. All right, so user and group management. Obviously, whenever you are on a Linux system or any system in that matter, you have to have user accounts, and you may need to organize those users into groups, organize permission based on the user and the groups. I guess let's start with your user account. So if you wanted to see what groups you were a member of on any Linux system, if you're in the terminal, you can type in ID, and it'll display your UID, which is a number associated to your username, to your user account. Every file has an ownership of a UID and a GID. These are really numbers. As far as the system, the OS is concerned, it really cares about the number and not necessarily the name. You can actually change your UID, or change if you're using like an NIS system or an Active Directory system. You could change which users have what UIDs. So if you did an ls on a directory, ls-al, and it shows you who owns which files, that's based on the UID number. So right now I'm looking at mine. My UID is 1000. If 1000 got associated with the user account Leo, then even though the ownership of that file hasn't changed, it would display Leo as opposed to displaying Bo, and whoever is UID 1000 owns that file. So that's how the system sees the users as numbers as opposed to the name. It's really just displaying the name so that it's a little more human readable for you.
Yeah, one of the cool things about that is you can actually prove this if, and I don't suggest anybody go and actually delete their user account, but if you associate files ownership with a given user or something like that, and then you turn around and delete that user, that file is still associated with that user. It's not associated with the username. It's associated with the user ID. And if you do an ls and Bo, I'm going to tell you it's LA, not AL.
It works either way.
Yeah, it does. But when you do an LSLA, you will see that nothing actually changed. But instead of seeing whatever the username it used to be, it'll be user 1013 or something like that. That'll be who actually owns that particular file. And if you go and, like as Bo was talking about, go create a new user and then force them to be user ID 1013, they will now assume ownership of that file. So you have to be aware of UIDs and how they actually work. So yeah, just interesting stuff.
So I did a cat of the Etsy /Etsy/password file, PASSWD. This file actually contains all the user accounts in the system, and then it has separations by semicolon. And if I look at my user account in this list, I can see there that my user ID and my primary group ID is both 1000, and that's because most systems, whenever you create your user account, they also create a group and assign you to that group. That's
and 1000 is right now the standard across most Ubuntu-based systems. I don't know about others.
Yeah, that's right, because system accounts are used prior to 1000. I kind of have a funny story about this. At one time, we were migrating an older system to a newer system, and the user accounts started at 500 instead of 1000. And so we had user accounts that were 632 and yada yada yada. They couldn't log into the new system because there actually was a rule within the PAM, the login credential manager within Linux, or at least in this particular system, that said that if the account is lower than 1000, just don't let them log in. And so no user under 1000 could log in, which was an interesting problem because we're wondering why some people can log in and some people can't. And it's like the people that have been around for a really long time that have the really low UIDs that can't log in. And so, it was hard to try to determine, well, what's the differentiator between these two accounts? Why can this brand new person log in and this person that's been here for 40 years, why can't they log in? Um, so that was a fun problem to solve. But yeah, in most modern systems today, as far as I know, all modern systems, it starts at 1,000. Also, if we look back up at my ID command, I can see that I'm a member of the CD-ROM group, the sudo group, the dip group, the plug dev group, the lpad min group. I'm a member of a bunch of groups that, and I didn't put
But
myself in
not
any
the
of these
Docker
groups.
group.
Not the Docker group, not on this machine. These were put here whenever my account was made automatically by the system. So I've not actually added myself to any group. These are just the default ones. But if you were creating a new user, so this is how you can view the information on an existing user. But let's say you were making a new user, you could use the command user add. I'm pulling up the man page.
Here's another shout out to Fish. It'll like really hook you up with all the cool options that you can use for user add, and it'll explain them all. So that's really cool.
Yeah, that might be useful for these demonstrations. If it just can auto show me my options, that might actually be a nice way to display it. But we have so whenever you do user add, and then you'd put in the flags for the different fields that you might fill in. So whenever you install Linux and it has you set up that first user account, and you have to put in the full name and then the username and those fields. Well, those are all flags with the user add command. So the -C is the full name, for example. -E is expiration date. You have a -S, which is setting the default shell. So you could set your default shell to fish if you'd like Leo has. -D, you can set your home directory. That's another thing that I've seen in the different environments I've worked in. /home/user account is almost never the actual home directory. That's what most people use at home, but within a corporate environment, they've probably changed that. So you would put in whatever that is, in that field. One thing you'll notice that's not in the user add command is password. It's not a good idea. As a matter of fact, I'm not even sure if it's an option in the user add command to add the password within your what you're typing into bash, because then it gets saved in your history. And if anybody types in history to see the commands that you've typed in the past, they actually would see that password that you typed in. So to solve that problem, they have another command called password, PASSWD. And if you type in password and then the name of the user, I believe, it will prompt you to type in the password that you want to set. And it's standard, like, you type it once, hit enter, and then it'll ask you to type it again to confirm it and hit enter again. So like I said, you just wouldn't want to do that on the same field that you're typing in your user add command, because then it would be saved in your history. So that's why they have that solution. I just glanced through the man page for user add, and they do have the ability to do that. So if you type in -P, you can set the password.
Can't you also set the expiration for the password, though, so that if it's for another user, they log in, they use the new temporary password, and they're immediately prompted to change the password?
Oh, yes, you can. Is that the -E command? -E flag? Or is that an expiration date for? So -E says expiration date. Is that expiring the password or expiring the account?
It expires the account. So the way that you would want to do that is you would want to use change instead. I don't know actually how to say this. I don't know how to say any of these commands like in English, but CHAGE. So you're changing the aging attributes of a particular user account, and you'll want to do it that way, where you can either, lock the account, which probably not really what you want in that case, but you would probably set up, expire the password in 5 minutes, and then give them a window of 7 days to reset that password on login. That would probably be the easiest way to deal with that.
So yeah, you can use just --expire or -E on password itself. PASSWD.
Okay. I did a man on the password command and it gave me an error, but I'm doing --help and yes, -E. So -E for the user add command is the expiration date for the user account. But you can use the -E command with the passwd command, and that says force expire the password for the named account. So you can force it to expire. So yeah, that's exactly right. That's how you'd want to do that. You also have -L, so you can lock the password. You can delete the password. So there's lots of different flags you can use with passwd. Passwd-help give you a nice list of that. You have user mod. So you've created a user and you need to change something. You need to rename it. You need to lock it or unlock it. You would use user mod, and then the -L to rename, the -L to lock, and the -U to unlock. I'm just going to pull up their man page real quick. All right, so you can also change the home directory with a -D. You can add a comment. Lots of different things that you can do, but that would be for if you're modifying a user that you have created. It would be user mod.
So I wanted to
go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, okay. I wanted to say that at this point is where changing your shell is probably a good idea. If you wanted to change it to fish or to zish or seashell or any of those other shells that you've got a love for or whatever, you can use user mod to actually do that for you. So in my case, what I did the other day was I installed fish, went through that whole process, installed PPA, installed the package, and then at that point, every time I would open a shell, it would be bash, of course. And then I would have to type fish to get into fish shell. Well, I wanted to make that permanent, or at least semi-permanent, until I decided I didn't want it anymore. And user mod is what you use to help you out with that. So you type in, because it's your own account, you don't necessarily need sudo with this particular command, but if it's somebody else's account, you probably will. So user mod space -S for saying, here comes the shell that I want you to use, or you can use --shell as well. But so user mod space -S space. In my case, it was user bin fish. So /usr/bin/fish. And I get this a lot. USR doesn't actually stand for user. I just pronounce it as user. It stands for Unix System Resources. So don't expect user stuff to go into there.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and when you actually dig into it, you realize that, well, that makes a lot of sense because that's where a lot of your binaries and all your actual resources are. But I get that a lot where it's like, where's your home folder? In user. No, it's not.
Oh, yeah. I just thought it was like a legacy thing. Like I knew that that's where certain binaries were stored, and there's other binaries stored other places. And it just seems like a lot of times there's legacy reasons as to why they might be in one place or the other. And so I just thought it was kind of a situation like that.
Yeah, actually, it is legacy, but it's in backwards. So, here, hang on. So -S USR bin fish, and then you type in the username of the account that you wanna change that to, and that will change your shell after you log out and log back in. So you open up a new terminal, boom, it's fish now instead of bash, and then you just do the reverse on that. If you want to revert that change, you want to just go to bin bash instead of user bin fish. But yeah, so the idea of that legacy change, it actually is, and it turns out that bin and lib64, those are the legacy ones, and a lot of times those directories are getting linked to from user bin and user lib and all of that kind of thing. And I'd actually have to check it in Ubuntu if Ubuntu is one of those. But I know that Red Hat distributions tend to do that a lot, where the older directories like /bin are being slowly deprecated for the user bin alternative.
That's a good point too, to point out that you have to, if you're setting your shell, you have to set it to point to the shell binary. You can't just say that you want to use fish, and it's not smart enough to just use that. You have to actually point to it.
Yeah, absolute file paths, absolutely all of the time in situations like that.
Another thing, I was just looking at the man page and I found the -S, but I also found just below that, this one's kind of interesting, a -lowercase u lets you change the numerical UID. So if you, for some reason, change your UID, or like in the scenario I talked about earlier, we didn't actually have to use this command because all those UIDs were stored in Active Directory, not on the system. But if they had been stored on the system, we could have used the user mod space -u space and then the UID that we wanted for each user to set them to a UID that was higher than 1,000. Now you have to have some way. I guess if you're only worried about one system, you just look at the password file, make sure that the UID that you're setting is not already in use. Otherwise, if you're wanting your users to log into multiple machines and always have that same UID, you'd have to have some sort of source management for who has what UID across all of the different systems, various systems.
Yeah, you can do that with something like Ansible, or in a typically what most people end up doing is something like LDAP, so you have all the user management handled elsewhere.
Right, yeah. All right, so then that moves us on to, let's say I want to just delete Leo out of the system altogether. You would use the user the user DELs command would be what you would use to do that. And if you use the user DEL command, if I were to just say user del Leo, it would delete Leo's account, but it would leave all of his files there. If you needed to also remove the files, it would be user del -r Leo. So that's the key there, is whether you want to retain the files or delete them. And just like Leo said earlier, if you deleted Leo but kept his files, they would still be owned by that UID, even though no user has claimed that UID at this moment.
So then if you created a new user and it grabbed the first UID that was available, would they suddenly get ownership of all of former Leo's files?
That's
Yes,
a good
you'd have
question.
to force it. You'd have to force it. So typically, if a user ID is used, it just won't ever get used again. So if you create user ID 1001, just by I created a second user on my system or something like that, and then you go and delete that user, and then you go and create another user, by default, that new user ID is going to be 1002. Now, something else that took a little bit of like learning for me to remember was that if you go and specify, so you create user ID 1000, and then you go and force the creation of user ID 1005 by adding the -u option to one of those, like the user add command. That one is going to be the new starting point. So when you go create another user, it's going to be 1006. It won't go back and use 1001, then 1002, 3, 4, and then skip 5 and then go to 6. It'll just keep counting from where you left off. So you got to be aware of that as well, in case you want to actually use up all of those lower level user IDs.
All right, and then we can move on to groups, and a similar command to the user add. There is a group add, which, you guessed it, is for adding a new group. Just pulling up their man page. They have -F for force, a -G if you want to set the GID as you create the group. And they have a -P for password. For the, what would the password be for the group?
So when getting access to files that a group owns and you have a password on the group, you have to present the password as well.
Wow! So you can say this folder is owned by this group, and if it has a password set and you're not in that group, you could put in a password, or even if you're in the group,
I
you
think
have to put in
it's
the
that,
password.
or it's when you add someone to a group. I've never actually seen it used in practice, so I only know this academically. So I just know that you can add a password. I don't exactly know what you're supposed to be using it for, though.
I didn't realize that it was a thing until this moment. It says this option is not recommended because the password or encrypted password will be visible by users. Oh, that's talking about the history. Yeah, if you use this, then it'll be visible in your history because it was saved in your bash input, your standard in. Wow. Well, that's the thing. But yeah, so if you want to create a group, you'd use group add. Likewise, similar to the user mod command, there is a group mod too. So you guessed it, you can modify groups by using the group mod. Let me see if they have any interesting flags. The group mod plan, you can modify the GID. It's really similar to the group add. Actually, it's just after the fact. If you needed to change any of these things, you have flags to do that. And they have a group. They have a G pass WD as well. And the G pass WD, you can add a user. You can delete a user. So this is a way to move people in and out of groups. I don't know why you would do that over just doing a user mod and putting them in the group. I don't know why you would do it backwards. You can remove the group password using the gpasswd command. Anyway, for the sake of the exam, I'm sure I just have to be aware that exists.
Honestly, I'd be surprised if you actually get the get password or the gpassword command on the test at all.
Okay. It doesn't seem practical because you just use user mod for that, I feel like. All right, well, I have you have the new group command, new grp, which I believe is if you want to change your primary group. Correct me if I'm wrong, Leo, but I think the new grp command is for, let's say, my primary group. Well, my primary group on this system is Bo. It's just because it made me a group based on my user account. But let's say I was in the mintCast group, and but I wasn't my primary group, and I wanted to make it my primary group because the file that I was about to make, I wanted to have that group's permissions. Then I would use the new grp command and then the name of the group, and it would set my primary group to mintcast.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly what that does. Because it'll always go with whatever your user group is, your user owner group, and then your group owner group, whatever those are. Any file that you make in folders that you own, it ends up being user owned by Leo, group owned by Leo. And when you use new group, yep, just as he said, if you set that to mintcast, it'll be user owned by Leo and then group owned by mintcast. That'll it works pretty well when you want other people to be able to edit your files, and then they have write access. The mintcast group has write access to it or something like that.
Yeah. Otherwise, you'd have to change the file permissions. You'd have to basically change the ownership or the read, write, execute permissions for people that were not in your group to deal with that. So it just makes it a little more convenient to that. So according to my breakdown, I have su versus sudo as the next thing to talk about. I actually think it flows better if we go directly into file permissions. So, well, just briefly, su versus su dash versus sudo. I'm sure everybody listening to this right now knows the sudo command because they've used it a billion times. If you need to run something as an administrator level, as a root level, you would use the sudo command. It's going to ask you for a password. You have to be in a group that is in the sudoers file, which is /etc/sudoers. And there's a certain format to how things have to be put in that file in order to allow you to either run sudo commands with a password or without a password. And in the sudoers file, you can set that as a user is allowed to do it with or without a password, or you could say every user in this group is allowed to do it with or without a password. And then recently, Leo and I were talking about, and I only just recently found out that you can actually specify binaries that a user is allowed to run with or without a sudo, without a password. They could still not run anything else on the system, but if you say that they're allowed to do user bin fish or something like that as sudo, then they can. So all of that is set in the /etc/sudoers file. Now, you can't, or I guess you could, but it is not advised to just edit that file directly. Can you do that even as root?
Run the vice sudo or actually edit the file?
Actually, just edit the file without visudo. You just run
Oh.
vim sudo.
Yep, you absolutely can. As root, you can absolutely edit that file with whatever your favorite text editor is. But may God have mercy on your soul when you make a typo in that thing, because
Yeah, you can
breaks
lock yourself
everything.
out. Yeah, you can break it so that even you can't run sudo commands and you can't log back into you can't sue into root on some OSs. So you could really screw yourself up. So they have a program called visudo that will actually parse the changes that you've made and make sure that it's working changes before you save it. You can still make a mistake and screw something up, but it lowers the potential of you just completely locking yourself out of the system.
Yep, typos are a big no-no in that file. So visudo is going to make sure you don't make any typos. But yeah, as Bo said, you can still break it, but there won't be any typos. It'll be broken properly.
Yeah, it would be logically broken somehow. So visudo is their solution. Their solution to that. It's the training wheels for editing the sudoers file.
Yeah, and one of the things that it really tickles me about this one is that you have to run that as sudo. So sudo visudo is typically how
Yeah.
someone with sudo privileges will run that file or run that binary.
But let's talk about permissions. So file permissions. I'm just gonna on my video recording here. I'm gonna do an ls-la. Only I did al because of anarchy.
ls space dash latr.
Yeah. Yeah, LATR. What does the TR
Yep.
do?
You want me to blow your mind real quick? So you don't actually have to write out ls-la on Ubuntu-based systems. You can just type in la. It's an alias to lsla.
Oh, repeat that. I'm sorry.
So you don't have to actually write ls space dash la. There is an alias on Ubuntu-based systems that is just la. If you just type la enter, that will do the same thing as ls-la.
No, it is not the same.
No?
It is not the same on Linux Mint at the very least. Because with LA, I am not getting any of the permissions showing up. It's basically just an LS.
What?
Well,
No.
an LS space dash A.
Because yeah, when I do it, the only difference between LS-LA and then just the LA alias is that LA gives me human readable values in the file size column, but I still get permissions and everything else.
No, I'm not seeing any of the permissions, the ownership, the sizes. It's
Really?
this is an LS space dash A as opposed to an LA. And let me type alias
I
and
see.
look.
Yeah, I see. If I do ls-la, if I do
But
just la, it does an ls. It looks
now,
like.
if you do if you type alias and hit enter, you'll see that LA equals LS space dash capital A.
Yep, you're
And
right. You're right. You're actually right. I'm looking in my Etsy bash RC, or my
yeah,
bash
you can
RC
do it
file,
that way too, but
and
it's just easier to type in alias and hit enter.
yeah, sure enough though, I see LS dash capital A. So now I gotta go figure out what that is.
Now, LL is LS space dash ALF.
Yeah. We can point out here too that the reason why you get like colors is because whenever you type in ls, you're actually doing ls-color equals auto, and most systems have that as their default alias.
Yeah, we're
But
gonna have to do a show on aliasing here pretty soon because they keep saying
Yeah.
that word.
I like aliasing. I set up some fun ones.
Anyway,
Interesting.
so
I'm really curious as to why the capital A gives me all that info. Then,
I have no idea. But if I look, so I'm going to, I did a ls-al and just going from left to right. It's hard to do over audio, but you have, let's break it up into columns. So you have the first column this is basically your permissions column that tells you the read, write, execute permissions for
Group, users and group.
Right, for users, group, for the owner, user, and group, right?
It should be root user group, isn't it?
What now?
Well,
sorry, I was digging into the LSLA thing.
The
because,
first,
yeah. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
the first, the very first letter, or the very first character that you see there, gives you some information about whether it's a directory or not. So if you see a D there, it's a directory. If you see a L, it's a link. And if you see a dash there, it's a file. There may be some other ones, but those are the ones I'm aware of.
Yeah, there's B for block device. So like your SDA and all of that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Oh man, I never copied over that thing because I have a few other options.
After that, what order do the permissions come in?
User owner, group owner, and other.
Okay, user owner, group owner, and other. Okay.
Yeah, so you
user
have
group everyone.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I think of it. User group everyone, or other is, but it's a good habit probably to memorize other, because that's what the U, the G, and the O stands for. So whenever you do a ch own or ch mod, and then you say O plus X, you're giving others execute. That could easily be
when
mistaken
you're doing
for
it the
owner.
wrong way.
Yeah, I'm used to using the numbers.
Fighting words.
But I just wanted to make the distinction that it would be easy to think of O as owner, but it's other. And so that's why I think it's important to maybe remember, these 9 characters that are broken up. Try to remember them as user group other. That way it's also easy for you to remember the U, G, and the O. But you see, so the first 3, RWX, that's for user. In this case, if I'm looking at the top file on my list here, then it's R-X. That means read and execute for anyone that is in my group. Or I'm sorry, that's in the root group. These files are actually owned by root, the ones I'm looking at. And then the next set of 3 is read. There's R-X for read and execute. And this is for anybody else in the world that logs into the system that is not root and not in the root group. But anybody else still has read and execute because of that R-X right there. And then the part that we've recently talked about, and I said was a recent epiphany for me, the numbers that come in. So whenever you see instructions that say chmod 755, that's actually what we're looking at here. So 755, each sets of these 3 numbers add up to 7. So the X is 1, the W is 2, and the R is 4. So if you add all 3 of those numbers up, 4, 2, and 1, that adds up to 7.
Right. And if you're looking at it as binary, so that's 1, 2, 4, which is 1, 1, 1, which equals 7. So
right.
Your R is the first one, literal 1. Your right, your W is your 2, your 1, and then your execute is your first row 1. And so that's how you figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you want to get real technical with it, those the 1, 2, and 4 are octal, so they're actually in base 8, and this is where the whole chmod comes from. So changing the mode, the octal mode of these particular files. So yeah, count up to 8, people. That's how you deal with that.
So if you were looking at 755, then you've got to get 5 in the group field, and you've got to get 5 in the other field. So that's 7 for user, 5 for group, 5 for other. I know that there's lots of people out there that have heard this a million times, but it's just hard to describe over audio only. So that would be the 4 plus the 1 is the only way to get a 5. So that's R and the X.
And that's 101, which would mean that they would have first row R1 and execute. So they could read and execute.
Right, exactly. And then the area that I am not necessarily familiar with until studying for this exam, and I've followed instructions online that I've come across this before, but is not the way I'm used to doing it myself, is doing the U plus, G plus, and the O plus. So if you say chmod and then the number. That's one way of doing it. The other way is chmod, and let's say I want to give people in my group write privileges to a certain file or certain directory. Then I would say chmod g plus w, and that's saying the group that owns this file, or the group that's associated with this file also has write. Or if I wanted to say other people, they're not in my group, I don't care, they can write, then I would say O plus W. So chmod O plus W. I'm going to type some of this out just so I can show an example.
And while you're doing that, Joe, I think you were making a joke about it, but the idea, though, I think is way easier to digest in this way. Just simply because, for two reasons. Number one, if you're doing change mode, but with the octal values, you have to go into that file before you ever change anything and verify the current set of permissions so that you don't break the other permissions. So, for example, if a file was 755 and you wanted to make it 775, well, you'd first have to go over there and do the math on the current permission set to make sure that it was 755 in the first place. And then you got to add 2 more bits, or you got to add the right to the group owners to get 775. So every time you want to make a permission change, you have to go and do math. And
do the math.
I don't know about basically. I mean, if you want to add the right, you have to add 2 to 5, and then you get 7, and then 775, right? So I mean, I'm not saying it's hard.
You just
math.
don't see it in binary.
I am not as good as Cypher on the Matrix, right? Blonde, brunette, redhead. No, but I think it's a lot easier to tell someone, hey, you need to go add the execute bit to the group owners of that particular file, and then if they go and turn around and do chmod g plus x and then the file name, they don't have to care about what the user owner's permissions are. They don't have to care about what the other permissions are. They can just solely affect the group ownership of that file without caring about any of the other things on.
I can
on that
see what
file
you're
itself.
saying there, but it's always good to have some random excuse to use binary.
See now, okay, now I can agree with that one, because especially when I teach this, I obviously teach it with the octal values in the first place, just because it's the way we've always done it and all of that kind of thing. And not that it's new or anything like that, but what the symbolic modes are, they're just easier to digest. I think people can see them a whole lot easier.
It is funny though that, like, me and Joe learned it the other way, and so the newer, probably simpler way seems odd to us.
Yeah, and I mean, when I learned it, it was certainly odd as well, and I always hated it.
It would be easier if you could just, do the whole row in binary. Like you wanted to do a 7, you do 1, or chmod 111, and then for a 5, you do the 101, and then a 101 for the next one, and just hit enter.
Or just do RWX, but then that gets you back to where we're talking about now, where you can just say U plus RWX or U minus X.
Yeah, I think in both ways we're actually talking about the same thing.
It's
all binary.
The same thing.
Yeah.
Honestly, y'all's discussion here has kind of led me to understand why they use the new one, the newer way now, the OU and the G.
Yeah,
and people don't learn binary well enough. That's why.
Well, but so here's the thing, though. I think like the two big topics where you gotta, one of the big topics is subnetting. You don't have to know binary. You don't have to know anything about binary at all to be able to subnet a network down as far as you want it to go, down to /30 or something like that, right? Point-to-point links. It doesn't matter. You don't need binary for that. And when I teach that, I teach it without the binary. It's just so much easier for people to understand and to break it down to binary. And then go ahead.
I was gonna say, I always write that down. I always write down the ones and the zeros. It's the only way I could figure it out.
And the biggest reason that I don't do binary, number one, is because I prefer it without binary. But number two is the fact that when you're well, I mean, don't get me wrong. I understand that the binary is required for the fullest understanding of how subnetting works and all that stuff. But when you're sat down in front of
binary, that's blasphemy.
Oh, okay. Well, I do dislike binary. But if you're in a situation where you're sitting in front of a computer and you have 90 minutes to answer 60 questions, and 20 of those questions have everything to do with subnetting, and none of that stuff hinges on the previous question, you got to break down a bunch of subnets. Doing it in binary is going to slow you down so fast.
It's going to take so long.
far.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
it's not
for no
something
other reason.
So on the team that I work on, there's like a network guy, and he can just, I mean, he can just glance at that and just tell you exactly, how many, oh, that's a range of, X number of, possible. Like he can just look at it and just know. But I don't never use it, and so anytime I'm asked to figure something like that out, I always have to just jot it. I have to write it down, draw a line where it's cut at, and then make a bunch of ones and a bunch of zeros, and then add that up. I can't do it any other way.
Yeah, I get the that long stare, the how do you do that kind of thing. Just because I've been dealing with it for the past 10 years or whatever, so it's become pretty easy for me now. But
this is
it's the arithmetic stuff. I'd take the binary out of it.
But I've got I made I misspelled both of them. I tried to make a mintCast folder in my home directory, and I missed the T, and then I tried to make a test-dir folder for us to test with, and I put test-fir because I misspelled both of them. But so if I'm looking at this test directory that I made, and using the UG and the O method, if I wanted to chmod this folder and give others right. So I would just say chmod u plus w, and if I wanted that to be recursive so that everything in the folder also took it, then that would be a $R.
Yeah, I think with a lot of these topics, that video is going to come in really, really handy because it's hard to visualize some of this stuff.
All right, I typed something wrong because it didn't work. Oh, because I did a U instead of O. Okay, so same command, but an O instead of a U.
So one of my biggest pet peeves about these symbolic modes is that every time I've ever seen in a blog telling you to download this thing and then add the execute bit, they just do +X. So they do usermod space +X space the file name. And when you don't specify who you want, right, U, G, or O, it just does it to everybody. So
yeah, I will admit I am guilty of that.
Yeah, that bugs the crap out of me because that is not well. I mean, you don't have to. It's your own machine. You're probably going to delete that script right after you do this thing anyway.
Right.
But I mean, it's giving others and group owners the privilege of running that particular software because typically everything is created with read on others for pretty much any file that you create. So yeah, you're giving them the ability to read and execute that particular script. So if they have certain privileges.
I'm also occasionally guilty of not wanting to, figure out what permissions a folder should have and just throwing a 777 at it.
Oh yeah, that's one of my commandments. Thou shalt not 777.
Yeah, I would not admit on recording that I've ever done that.
I have.
So if I wanted to change this back using the other method, the number method, just so I can give an example of both. So if you're watching my video, but I'll try to describe it as best I can without the video. I changed test-fir. It originally said RWX, R-X, R-X. Now, because of chmod O plus W, it is now RWX, R-X, RWX, meaning that other people can write to it. If I type in chmod-R 755, currently it's a 757, so this should change now to what it was before. So let's take a look at it. And sure enough, it's back to the way my file system created it by default.
And you can I don't know that we've talked about it yet, but you can also do, instead of on the symbolics, you can do plus, right, obviously, but you can also do minus to remove and equals to set exactly this way.
Okay, yes. Okay, I didn't realize that about the equals. But you can definitely do the minus to remove. So if you say equals, then it doesn't care what it is. That's what it will be. Isn't that what a plus is doing it either way?
No, plus will add it. So if you had R-X and then you did a plus W, it would be RWX at that point.
Right, but if it's a R, either way, like if it's already an RWX and you do a plus W, it's not going to remove the W.
Wait, say that one more time.
So if you do, if my test directory here already had right in the others field, and then I did chmod u plus W, it wouldn't remove the W because it already has it. The command would
Right,
just
no.
complete with no change.
Yeah, but if you did, so let's say it had RWX and you wanted to just have R, you could either minus WX or you could do equals R, and it would strip off all the other permissions.
I see. And that works better because you may not know what it currently has. And you're just saying, whatever it
Exactly.
is, make it this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. All right.
I do this a lot when I'm setting permissions, and as you said, I don't know what the permissions are, but I know what I want them to be. So I'll just do a U equals RWX, G equals RW, O equals R, or something like that, and you just separate those with commas, and you can set the whole thing that way.
And then we'll try to breeze through chown and umask real quick. But the reason why, just because we can kind of touch on it since we kind of have an example of it, when I made that file, the test directory, it made it a 755 by default. And that's because of my umask. My system has a umask, or it must have a umask for directories of 0 to 2. I kind of think of this as subtraction. Like, so it's taking 777 and it's subtracting 2 from the last two numbers, and so 777 minus 022 is 755. So whenever I create a directory, it just looks at what my default umask is, and it just creates that. You can change the umask to be something else. You could change it to something a little bit stricter. You could change it to 777 and make everything on your system open. Every time you make a directory, it's just available to everybody.
Do it.
But that's what, in a nutshell, that's what umask is. Now there's locations of where you set that. It could be in your .profile. It could be, there's a few different places. I don't want to say a number, it's not a huge list, but there's a handful of different places that could be set, and that's mainly based on whether you're on a Red Hat based distribution or a Debian based distribution. Is probably the main difference there. But there's a few different places you can set the umask. But I just think of it as chmod, even though it's not really addition. It is addition because you're adding up the 1, the 2, or the 4 to get your variation of that number. Whereas the umask is subtracting from 7 is kind of the way I picture it.
Yeah, and don't forget that when you create files, you never get execute. So whatever the umask is, you want to also, for files, you want to also remove off the execute bit, so you know exactly what your files permissions are going to get.
Right, and that's another thing too. And wherever your .profile is, or whatever is controlling your umask, you'll have one there for directory and one for file. And they'll typically be different because of that. Yeah.
And understanding umask is helpful when you're trying to auto mount drives as well. You can use umask to set what all the file permissions will be for every time a directory or drive mounts.
All right, and then finally we have chown. That's another command that I feel like people listening to this podcast has used before, so I'll briefly go over it. Chown is changing the ownership of a file or directory, and the way it works is if you look at your ls-al or la, sorry, you'll see the column for the user and the column for the group, and that ownership, the user that owns it and the group that owns it. Again, in my case, it's just Bo and the group Bo because that's just the way my system set my account up. If it said Bo in the group mintCast owns the file or the directory test fur, if I wanted to change that, I would say chown Leo semicolon, and then mintCast or whatever the group is, and then the name of the file. And then just like in chmod, you have a -R to make it recursive.
Yeah, and you can't really mention chown without mentioning chgroup, chgrp.
Yeah, I like to bring that one up, but then I always want to bring it back to and I say it chown. I don't think any of these actually have a pronunciation, but you can do groups by itself as well. So you can do chown space colon and then the group name and then the thing that you want to change the ownership on. So you just don't specify a user owner. You just do a colon group owner, and then that'll just change the group owner as well. So it helps people to remember just one command as opposed to two.
All right,
I did not know that.
I think
all right.
I think that pretty well covers permissions and ownership. And for doing it on a podcast without any visual aids, you guys did exceptionally well.
Yay! Everybody gets 100.
And I also had down here ACLs and sticky bits, but let's talk about that on a different. I'll add it into another section when we do another one.
Yeah, heck yeah, definitely. And for those of you that are listening, especially those of you that have followed with us up to this point, let us know how we're doing. Definitely let us know what we need to add to this thing. We're Bo's obviously getting some video of all of this done, and then of all of our chatter and all that stuff for the video too. So if you need the visual aids, we'll have those out there eventually, one of these days. No promises.
Yeah.
You shared an excellent one with me. I didn't have a way of editing into the video live, but I'm going to edit it in when I edit this, and maybe we can add it to the show notes too, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Which one was it?
You shared one with me in Discord that I think that you made for your class.
Oh, the picture. Yeah, for sure. That one is actually a really cool image because, yeah, I mean, it's just really hard. It's just really hard to visualize some of this stuff. So there's it's colors. It's got nice, pretty colors on it and stuff. So it helps out a little bit sometimes when you're first getting started with trying to understand permissions, for sure.
Yeah, and I'm still trying to get K5TUX on the show for a Pi episode. Just got to convince everybody else to do Pi.
I think I'm ready to pull the trigger on this on the camera thing. So I'm gonna drop Motion eventually and just go to the Motion OS software that is there. So from that, then I'll be ready for a Pi episode. So whenever you want to do it, I'm ready.
Well, it'll be after Bo is done with his testing. So I want to make sure that we get all the episodes he needs in and done.
Cool. Well, then what I will do then is I will focus on documenting what I do, and then I'll bring that to the show whenever we have it.
And I just noticed that with our shortened crew, we seem to have forgotten to move in the vibrations from the ether, and we had some good ones.
Yes. So the one from Henrik, Joe, could you pull that one up? Because the other ones I think I had responded to, so I'll just read those on the fly, because we are oh so prepared for this show. All right, so on that note, that is it for our Linux innards, and we will dive into our listener feedback. So we had a bit of a longer one from Mr. Jim Daldry, and he was kind of coming off of the conversation that we were having about Proton VPN. He was saying that he had a PIA account when they got bought, same as me. And so he stopped using it and got a Proton account. So he actually pulled the trigger on the thing that I was talking about wanting to do, but I figure I'll just let my PIA subscription run out, and then I'll hop onto the Proton train after that. It's a little more expensive, but I mean, I feel like privacy's worth it. So anyhow, he's talking about how he's back on AT&T Fiber, and he gets both a IPv4 and V6 IP address. But if he fires up the PIA VPN, it looks like it's connecting. Oh wow, if he does IP addressing tests, they find out that he's living in Raleigh and connecting through AT&T. Wow. So yeah, not great. So anyway, anytime he wants to do anything regarding email, he's got to turn off his VPN. And he has this story about FM, and I really can't go on to it on this show, but Joe, you probably know what I'm talking about when you do something and you don't know why it works, and so you just say FM, right? Maybe, maybe not. Well, I've got a lot of prior military come through my classes, and yeah, they give me the old FM when they don't know how they fixed something. So yeah. Anyhow,
I'll have to
yeah,
ask my
magic.
dad about that one. I can guess what the
Yeah,
F is. I just can't guess
yeah.
the M.
M is magic. M is magic.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, exactly. Yep. So I told him thanks for that feedback because I plan on doing the Proton VPN thing, and that's really giving me hope for the switchover because he was able to actually get the email done. He followed up with another email saying that he was going to try the sending email via Proton VPN because it wouldn't work with PIA, but it would. Turns out it will with Proton VPN. So the guy can, so Jim can actually leave the VPN on all the time and stay private all the time and not ever have to worry about whether or not his emails are going to get sent. So I feel like that's fantastic. So I said that gives me hope. And I tell him I heard the FM acronym quite a lot. And then another holdover from the military as well is, and Joe, you may know this one too, the password of exclamation point capital Q capital A capital Z 2WSX. So if you trace that with your finger, so exclamation point capital Q capital A capital Z 2WSX. Yeah, that password is way too prevalent. Stuff.
No,
So,
I actually
yeah.
hadn't heard that one, but
Really? Yeah.
you gotta
So
remember,
this is.
when I was in the military, it was 99 to 2003.
Ah, okay. So this happens a lot. It's a temporary password for the most part, but it for machines that don't have those restrictions on them, this password tends to seep its way into those machines, which is not a really good thing. But whatever. Anyway, so I say, oh, he also goes into the issue that he was dealing with in the whole reason for FM, by the way, was that he was going into the Intel issues that he was having with the Sandy Bridge graphics, and that an upgrade in Debian had totally just borked everything. But after reinstalling, everything works amazingly, and that's where the FM comes from. Not sure why it works, but it works. And yeah, so I was saying on my Sandy Bridge box, I have a laptop running off Sandy Bridge graphics. I just leave it on 4.15, so I never actually ran into that issue. But if I ever decide to upgrade, I'll know to keep an eye out for that. So anyway, thanks, Jim. Yeah, thanks, Jim, for the email. I appreciate that very much. And looks like Hendrix is the one that came in next. Sorry, yeah, next. So Joe, if you want to take that one.
Yeah. Henrik, aka H.E. Hemren, sent a message. Hello, mintCast team. Recently I treated myself with a refurbished Lenovo ThinkPad T430S. What a difference in robustness and modularity compared to my cheap Lenovo IdeaPad 100S. Yeah, that is a bit of a step up.
Yeah, it really is professional grade.
Yeah, I have Windows 10 Pro pre-installed and planning to add Mint and probably some more on it. However, not any Moss-like hard drive.
It's so bad that Moss isn't here to defend himself on that one.
Right? In the ThinkPad, it is possible to install a secondary hard drive in the CD-DVD slot. Considering several of you have ThinkPad experience, have you any thought how well it works, and what is your suggestion? Should I keep the operating system, Windows plus Linux, on the main drive and store my data, documents, photos, etc. on the secondary drive, or try to keep the OS and its data on the same drive, or it doesn't matter? If you have time, any short feedback in the show or so is appreciated. Best regards. I responded, I always replace the CD-DVD drive with a secondary drive. All my machines. If they have a CD drive, it's not going to last for long. As for the configuration, I would recommend it depends on the hard drives. If you have an SSD installed, then that should be your boot drive for both OSs. If they are spinning drives, then you could put Windows on one drive and Linux on the other, which will prevent issues with Grub, as you will be able to use key commands to tell the BIOS which drive to boot from. If you want to get fancy, partition both drives in half with the OSs on one drive in separate partitions, and one empty partition on the other for shared storage, and the other partition as your /home for Linux. This will allow you to retain your settings and files in Linux if you decide to test out other distros. Hemren responded, "Thanks, Joe, for your advice. The first drive is an SSD. Second, to be determined."
Yeah, I gotta say, I on my T450S, I didn't have a CD drive, but it did, however, come with the it's the M.2 slot, but SATA only. So you had to be kind of picky with the drives that you actually put in there. But that's how I did it. I have Linux Mint on my main 2.5-inch SATA drive, and then I have Windows on my other drive. However, I haven't booted into Windows, and man, it's coming up on like 6 months. So I may just blow it away and let that be my test drive for other distros or something like that. But I figured I would need Windows now and then, and I haven't in a very long time. So that's really cool.
Yeah, well, I have this one dual booted, and I have 3 hard drives in this laptop. The M.2 and then 2 spinning disks, which I have partitioned in interesting ways, but it works for me.
Yeah, and I'm way too worried about spinning disks anymore, because I am not nice to this laptop. Yeah, I mean, I gut the thing, I throw it around. I mean, it is, yeah. Can't say I have the best bag for it either. So I mean, it gets bumps all over the place.
Well,
So I'd be worried about spinning, but I mean, overall, like, yeah, I'm jealous of your third slot though.
yeah, my laptop is mostly a desktop replacement. I mean, it's an MSI GE72 with a 17-inch screen. I'll take it on long road trips with me, but it's definitely not something I'm going to use on battery power for very long, especially with 2 spinning disks in it.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. So one more, we have Larry Murphy wrote in saying, "Hi guys, he found a program from Jason Evangelo's podcast and installed it called GTK Stress Test. He says he learned about Stacer from this show, and he's just kind of finding a lot of good stuff all over the place. So I told him, glad you got some use out of Stacer. Now it's our turn. I'll take a look at GTK Stress to see what I can get out of it. It looks like GTK Stress is available in Flatpaks, in the Flatpak FlatHub repository. So I'll probably go install it and then report back next show."
And did you already read Stan Reichardt's?
No, go ahead if you'd like.
No,
I think I
I'm
did
gonna.
reply to him a little before the show.
Okay, I didn't see your reply, but I am gonna summarize here because he's a Red Dwarf fan,
I
and
didn't. Okay, I need to reply.
yeah, I don't see your reply there, but he does mention using pinfo to learn permissions, and he does show some examples in his email, and one of us will get that copied over into the show notes. It does seem like an interesting way to learn.
Yeah, what I wanna do is I wanna just because he's got that P info in a PDF that is linked over on slug.org. And he says to go to slide number 8. That's got the most useful information, and then further down from there is where you really get into P info. So I want to link that for sure. Yeah, and Red Dwarf.
And we have one other one from Andy, and he says, "I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this deep dive on commands. Let's keep this type of content around. Found it to be very educational and enlightening. Just good plain English explanation of what I always found cryptic and mysterious. Thank you for taking the time to share what you're learning."
Wow.
Thanks, Andy.
I asked for feedback, and there was already some waiting for us. I didn't get that one, so I guess that one went straight to you, Joe.
Did it?
Maybe. I
Why
don't
would that
know.
come
Either
to me?
that or
I mean,
our
this was
email
Bo's
linking is broken.
section.
Maybe you gave the best explanation.
Maybe. Well, cool. Thanks, Andy. That is awesome.
There's Andy's. Let me delete his address out of there.
Awesome. We had some thumbs up feedback from Discord as well. So Katya from Discord says she's missed some of the shows, but I like the topic of 328.5, which was our the last show, which is the same thing Andy was talking about, and how the three of you knew things about it and could talk about it on the fly. Interesting topic and fun conversation. Thanks for the show. So that's so awesome. And yeah, I blame Bo because he's studying for that test. But man, turns out, Bo, you brought some of the coolest content to the show, and we're getting a lot of feedback about it. I really do enjoy talking about that.
I hope
stuff.
I pass this test. If I do all this and I fail,
oh
God,
man,
I'll just never talk about it again. That's how you guys will know.
The difference is that when you bring command line stuff, everybody loves it. But when I bring command line stuff, everybody's like, that's way too complicated for voice.
I'm a little worried that today's was a little hard to describe over dialogue, but we'll see. We'll see how it sounds listening back to it. Sometimes I worry about it, and then when I listen back, it's not that bad.
Yeah, I think the same thing, because I even made a comment about it that you might need a video for it, but you may not. Some of those things might just be clarified for you. But in the off chance that you do, hopefully that video will come out one of these days, and we'll have something. All right, well, that'll do it for our feedback section. So we're going to head on down to scroll. Check this out. So we've got, I've got quite a few this time, but Joe, let's start with you. What do you got for check this out?
Yeah, I wanted this in the check this out section because that's where I usually put YouTube links, but I got another feedback where one of our listeners had requested me to go check out his page, and I thought it was pretty good, so I'm bringing it to everybody else. And this is listener LibreQuest, and he's producing Linux and technology-based videos on YouTube, and they are pretty good. Check them out. The videos are well done, and they are informative. I recommend them for everyone that wants to learn about Linux.
Awesome. And I've got 3 this go around. One of them, though, is GTK stress. It's just a link to the GTK stress test that we were talking about a little while ago. But I've got Cheat. So one of the cool things, if you don't have Fish, right? The idea with Fish is that it gives you a lot of information when you double tab or whatever. But if you don't have that, TLDR is another app that is in the Ubuntu repository that will do that for you. So you use TLDR like you would man. So instead of like man user mod, you'll do TLDR user mod. The cool thing about TLDR is that it'll give you an explanation, not just an explanation, a quick explanation, but it'll give you an example of that. Well, with man, you have to typically scroll around for a while to actually find examples, and sometimes they don't even exist. Well, Cheat is another application that is very similar to TLDR, and it focuses on cheat sheets. So it's also got to focus on how to use a command rather than the mundane explanation of all the options and all that kind of fun stuff. So check out Cheat, check out TLDR. Those are really cool little utilities, especially if you're learning the command line or just trying to get brushed up on some new command that you got that you're familiarizing yourself with. And then lastly on my list, I have an interview with Simon Peter, so the guy that created App Image. So those of you that like App Image, if you want to know why App Image is the way that it is and why the decisions were made that way, check out this interview with Simon Peter. It is pretty good, and really gets into why he does what he does. And that's I'm a sucker for that kind of thing. I love to know why, and I'll just keep asking why until I know why. That's it for check this out. So announcements. We just got our regular one. Thankfully, someone updated this one. Thank you, whoever you are. Our next episode will be live March 8th, 2020, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, 8 p.m. UTC. As well, I want to get a line on where we can get us outside of this show. So, Joe, where can we find more of you?
Well, you can listen to me on a couple other podcasts. I'm on the Linux Link Tech Show, which you can find at www.tllts.org. I'm also on the Linux Lugcast, which you can find at www.linuxlugcast.com. You can find me on MeWe or you can email me directly, jb@mintcast.org.
Awesome. Bo, what about you?
Oh, just ecnradio.com, Electric City Nerds, my other podcast. We should be live tomorrow playing. We're going to play AI Dungeon, which is a artificial intelligence dungeon simulator. So you start telling it a story, and then the AI takes over and completes your story for you. And I have a feeling it's going to be more hilarious than anything else, but we'll see. Could be really good.
Somehow It sounds like a mud.
It's exactly like a mud. Yeah, it's exactly like a mud that learns as you talk to it, or as many people talk to it.
And for people that don't know, that aren't our age, a mud is a multi-user dungeon.
Yep.
Old text-based
I'm familiar with
Telnet
Yeah,
games.
I was gonna say. Yep, that's what I'm familiar with, the Telnet ones.
I guess I should point out, if you want to watch us live, we don't stream live to ecnradio.com, but we have a YouTube channel. If you just look up Electric City Nerds, and we stream there, and we stream on our Facebook page.
Yes, but before there were MMORPGs, there were muds.
There were
There you
muds.
go.
Yep.
All right. Well, we were, if you haven't noticed by now, really short on people. So, Moss, you can find him at Peaceful Hippo, MeWe Music on Bandcamp, and Moss Bliss's YouTube channel, Robert Warren's channel, Moss at mintcast.org, and distrohoppersdigest@gmail.com, and a sponsors link for those of you that would like to contribute. He does make a note that listener George from Tulsa sent a $50 Amazon grocery gift card. So, thanks to you, George. Tony Hughes, you can find him on HPR, host ID 338. He blogs occasionally at tony-hughes.blogspot.com. Twitter handle at TonyH1212, distrahoppersdigest@gmail.com, and th@mintcast.org. Tony Watts, tw@mintcast.org, and Echoes of Savages, where you can download fine MP3s. Josh at mintcast.org, Josh at edgeblocks.org, and at allabout at all_about_code on Twitter. And me, leochavez.org, and at leochavez on Twitter. And you can get your 5-minute news digest at Full Circle Weekly News. I see you clicking on that, Joe. I haven't updated it in a while. I should probably update it. Or Bo, whoever's clicking on that.
Yeah. Before
we leave, we want to make sure to acknowledge some of the people who make mintCast possible. Josh for all of his work on the website and the live stream, Bytemark Hosting for hosting mintcast.org and our mobile server, archive.org for hosting all of our audio files, and the Linux Mint development team for the fine distro we love to talk about every fortnight. Thanks, Clem and Co.
I hate to say
And
it,
we're
but
out.
Your website looks like it was heavily influenced by magazines from the 80s and 90s.
I dig it. I really dig it.
I like it. I like the Leo at blog prompt you have up there.
I do that on Twitter too, but they wouldn't let me type out Twitter, so it just says at twit.
All right, I'm stopping my recording.
All right.
And so much for a shorter show since we have less people.
Oh
yeah,
my gosh, we almost 3 hours.
We got like all the talkers here.
Yeah, this is what happens, man. This is what. See, I think it's Tony. I think Tony keeps us. Tony and Moss. Actually, Moss does too. He'll remind us to shut up and move on.
I didn't know what to expect, so I was kind of I was kind of filling in time, and then I think I just didn't need to. We should have just went with it.
Yeah, I was trying to do that with your guys' sections on the bi-weeklies. But I think I spent as much time with my bi-weekly as you guys did. Not too much longer.
Yeah, ours ended up pretty full anyway. Yeah, and I mean, it was the questions really kind of added some time to it. But I mean, they were good questions though. I think
it's seriously a good show. I think it was a really good show, and we're splitting it in two. It's gonna be an hour and a half a piece, give or take.
Yeah, more like hour 20, hour 15. I feel like we'll be able to cut
after
some of that
the
out.
Silences.
Yeah, for
sure.
So
I dropped a curse word. I don't know how that stands in the mintCast. I don't know if you want to cut that out.
What curse word did you
when
drop?
When I talked about Python, I said I didn't learn a damn thing.
I think
Oh,
we might
Dan's
be able
not
to
too
get away
bad.
with that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's up to you, Leo. I trust your judgment. Doesn't bother
All
me,
right, cool.
but
Yeah,
I don't want it to.
Moss had a pretty good one the other day.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. So am I doing the editing this go around?
I don't think I can do it this week.
Okay, yeah, no
I
worries.
promise to do it next time though.
Ooh, all right, I'll hold you to that.
I
Sounds
have
good
to
to
do
me.
the Star Trek episode, and I'm gonna try to give these videos to you guys, and have a podcast tomorrow. So I wouldn't be able to
True
do it
that.
on Tuesday anyway.
Oh yeah, true that. So so are you using Reaper for all of the audio editing?
I just use Audacity.
Oh, okay, cool. And just with the
No.
because it was a really good edit. So I'm curious. Do you use everything that is in the show or in the notes that we have?
No, I don't follow. I don't follow it at all.
Okay.
I'll tell you what I do. I line everything up the way y'all do, and I do the noise removal the way you do, but then I render that to one file, and then I run that through Levelator. I run Levelator under Wine on my computer. Levelator they have a Linux version, but it's super old. I just run the Windows version under Wine, and then I put that file back in Audacity and I cut that up. That's what I edit.
Got it. Yeah, I've been very paranoid with my editing, so I end up with 3 separate files. I have the full edit where I go through and do the audio noise reduction and all that kind of thing, and then I save that to a first part and second part. And so this is actually gonna bite me eventually, because if I don't close Audacity at all when I'm saving all these things, especially with the noise reduction or whatever, the last edit I did, so two shows ago, it ballooned up to 70 gigs.
That's crazy.
The edit itself, yeah, and it's because I was doing all that noise reduction. I did it a couple times on some parts, and yeah, it holds all that in RAM. And then when you save it, it writes all that to disk, and so it's crazy massive. And I tried to I saved it. I made a bunch of changes before I actually saved it, so I was kicking myself for a little bit because I was like, I could have lost all that. But I saved it to a file. It literally took, on an SSD, one of the faster ones too, took like 8.5 minutes to write the show to disk, just the raw AUP file.
That's
it was crazy. Yeah, man, it's so huge. Anyway, so I learned my lesson. Close Audacity every now and then.
Yeah, no,
but then you lose undo. Yeah.
It really doesn't take me too long to do it, and once I get that done, I have the whole file, and I just save that so that whenever I do the 0.5, I then pull that file back in and cut out the parts I need and rearrange it.
Yeah, that's what I'll do. That's why I have the full as well. Because then I'll just chop off all the front stuff and then leave all the back stuff, and then just move around the intro part. It's usually pretty quick to do. But I had another point too. I forgot what I was gonna say. Man, yeah, I totally just lost it. Anyway. I was gonna say the only thing that actually takes me time is where we talk over each other. I try to minimize that as much as I can.
See, I didn't really adjust any of that.
Yeah, I mean, we do pretty good for the most part, to be honest. And I think a lot of times it's when we bring in other people to the show, because I think we're pretty good about letting other people talk and all that. But yeah, sometimes
I end up talking over people sometimes, and
yeah, I'm definitely guilty of it as well. So
it's not
I
always
try to go
bad
and
though.
minimize some of that. No, not at all. Anyway, all that was still on the live show, so I'm gonna go cut that off. So for those of you still listening on the live show, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate that, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
All right, my audio is uploaded.
I'm saving everything now, and then I'll get mine uploaded. I need to go in and check on the family though. I hear them in there fussing about something.